Hi guys, it's Megan and I am back to talk about the next book that I'm going to be reading. The first book this week, Ghost Camera by Darcy Coates. I am a huge fan of Darcy Coates. I have been reading her books for years. I think she is an amazing horror author. She always creeps me out, always has some cool vibes to it. And this book, from what I understand, is no exception to the rule. Now, I don't know much, but what I know from the synopsis is there is a woman named Janine, and she has a best friend named Bree, and she ends up finding an old Polaroid camera. And on the Polaroid camera, she gets like film developed, and when she gets the film developed, she ends up finding out that there are like ghosts in the pictures, and she starts taking more and more photos, and every time she takes more photos, the ghosts in the photos become more and more aware, coming closer and closer and closer. Her and her best friend Bree are involved in this, and they end up going to like a paranormal researcher to figure out what's going on, and they get told they're gonna die. That is what I'm getting so far, at least. So I am super excited to read it. 110%. I love creepy. I love horror. And we are so close to October now. I need to get the vibes going, baby. So I'm super excited to check it out. And I will check in with you guys at the 10% mark. And we will see what I think. See you then. Hi guys, I am back to talk about Ghost Camera by Darcy Coates. I am officially 10% into the book. It's creepy. I am loving the creepiness and the vibe of it all. It's very haunted, very spooky. Oh, also, I learned a really cool thing about this book. I had said earlier in my September TBR that this book was apparently released earlier and then now is like a re-release. Come to find out, this is actually the first book Darcy Coates ever wrote. And she ended up re-editing it and putting it back out this year and like changing some stuff up about it. So this is actually the first work she has ever done as a novel that she republished. So I was like, that's fucking awesome. I love Darcy Coates. So I'm so thrilled to read a book that was like her first book ever that now she has edited and repackaged and made it even better. So super excited. Apparently too, this is a very well-loved book. It was something that she said that of all the books that she's published over her many years now writing, that this is one that's like a favorite for so many people. And I can see it. I am loving the writing so far. I am intrigued. I'm interested. I feel like we're already in the action. I love that. Sometimes a horror book will just keep you going till you get to where you want to go. I feel like this one was boom, we found the camera, and it was like we were already in it. But let me explain what's going on so far. There is two main characters so far, Janine and Bree. Janine is she's studying to be a lawyer, but as a job, as of now, she is a photographer, and she takes pictures at a lot of events. She ended up taking pictures at a wedding, and at this wedding, to get like a nice aerial shot, she went up in this lighthouse and she took a picture down. And when she's taking the picture, her foot hits something. She looks down, and it's a really old Polaroid camera, she believes from the 80s. So she picks it up, takes a picture, a Polaroid does come out, and she goes, okay, this still works. I love cameras. I'm just gonna keep this. It's dusty. It's been up here for forever. She goes downstairs. An old man tells her like, hey, you shouldn't go up there. Like, it's not safe. That lighthouse is really old. A kid actually died up there years and years ago. So now she's under the impression, oh my God, what if I have this little kid's camera? That's horrible, but I'll take really good care of it. So she does the wedding, she does everything, and then she takes some pictures with the Polaroid and with just her regular camera. And then after the wedding, she's looking at the Polaroid and she's realizing she's seeing some weird things in the pictures. She's seeing some ghosties in the background, and she can tell that they're ghosts by the way they look. They're not looking at the camera. They're very pale. They're wearing like different period piece clothing, and she's like, maybe I'm insane. Maybe I'm fucking crazy, which, to be honest, kind of maybe. You never know. Maybe a little unhinged. So she goes to Bree, who is her best friend and also runs a flower shop. She owns her own business, and a lot of the times they do work together. Her as the florist and her as a photographer for weddings and such. So she goes there. She's telling Bree what's going on. They have been friends since they were little kids in school together, and she's like, look, this is so weird. Look at what's happening. And Bree doesn't immediately say, oh, come on, you're insane. She basically says, take a picture of me. Come on, let's see what happens. And when she does, she looks at the picture and realizes there is a dead person behind her. And then she goes, look, don't use this camera anymore. This is really fucking weird. Janine ends up going home, getting shit-faced plastered drunk, and deciding, I'll take some pictures, which is more or less what she does. Bree ends up, as a good best friend does, checking on her and being like, I called you all last night. What happened? And she was like, I got very drunk and I took pictures I shouldn't and I'm freaked the fuck out. And she's like, what do you mean you freaked out? What's going on here? And she basically tells her, like, look at the pictures. And in her room, there's a dead ghost. In her bathroom, there's one. But, like, you can kind of see that it must have been murder scenes back in the day. And that these ghosts died at these locations and they're still here. We just, with the naked eye, don't see these things. But she is now seeing all these things. And she has seen several ghosts now. So she's freaking out. Bree's like, I'm going to stay with you. Like, I'll stay with you here. And she's basically like, well, you know, it's not safe to be here. And she's like, my building's even older. So there's probably ghosts there. So they're coming to the understanding that there's ghosts around them all the time. It's just they usually you don't see them. You don't know that they're there. That is some creepy shit right there. That is very... makes me nervous. I live in New York. I live in an exceptionally old apartment building. So, reading that, I was like, okay. Look, ghosties, if you're anywhere around. I also have an old Polaroid camera that is old as dirt. And I was looking at it and I was like, no, I'm not using you. I basically have it on display more than anything now. And I'm like, I'm afraid. I don't like it. But Bree ends up staying with her, and they end up thinking, like, maybe we should find somebody, like, research to figure out what the fuck is going on here. And they find this guy named Richard, who is an expert in haunted items, and he doesn't want to help them. He basically tells them, like, no, you need to throw it out. You need to burn it. Like, do not play with it. Do not look at it. He hangs up on them. She calls them back and is like, look, if you don't help us, we're going to go to the media with this. And he starts panicking, like, no, people can't see this. Regular people, this is a bad idea. So now he's going to help them, and that's where we left off. So now there's a man named Richard who is an expert in haunted items and is going to help. Also, there's some freaky deaky shit happening that now when Jeannie and Bree went to the park to hang out and just relax, Jeannie was feeling like somebody cold grabbing her and touching her. And the more she takes pictures, the more the ghosts are being, it's kind of like, here's the ghost, here's the ghost. They take the picture. They're starting to become more aware of being filmed and getting angry, getting upset. And also, it seems to be that they're following them, like coming out of a ghostly plane, because she also feels that weird touch. She also sees like ghost prints like on her glass of her car. It's so creepy. And it's really creepy considering we're only 10% in. We're like 5 chapters into this book. Do I have any predictions? I think Janine and Bree are fucked just a little bit. I think this book is either going to be they're going to get away with it, figure it out, and everything's going to be fine, or it's going to be death. Because this was also one of Darcy Coates' first novel, so I feel like it could end that way. Darcy Coates' books usually do end in a positive light on whatever's going on. But since this was originally her first book, I don't know if it will do the same thing, if it'll be different, because she didn't like know how she was going to continue to write, but she did edit it, so maybe it changed. I don't know. I do think it's really creepy. I like the ghost angle. I like the photography angle. It's making me think a little bit of the horror movie Shudder, which I have not seen in forever. Maybe I'll watch that tonight. That would be a good little treat for the evening of horror. Writing is great as usual. I'm really loving the characters. Bree is very no nonsense, and Janine is just like, I won't take any more pictures. Click, 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 click behind her. So it's going to be interesting to figure them out and see more about their dynamic. But I love you guys. But I'm going to go so I can get back to the book because I'm really interested in it and I cannot wait to see what's going to happen next. And now we're about to meet Richard. We've only heard his voice like for 5 seconds and him saying, I'm not going to help. Oh shit, you're going to go to the media? Now I'm going to help. So hopefully we're going to get some interesting backstory on why like this Polaroid needs to be destroyed. And I'm also curious, he said to destroy it, but he said to destroy it before knowing that Janine had been taking pictures with it. So I wonder if even if she destroys it, it won't do anything because the ghosts are already recognizing her as a threat, as somebody who took the pictures, and she's already feeling their presence. I've seen a lot of horror films. So that is the vibe I'm getting. Oh, and Bree! Poor Bree. The cars are loud in New York today. I just realized Bree had a photo taken too. So, damn, Janine, you a badass friend. Like, you, poor Bree was just sitting there working. Well, I'm going to get back to the book. I'll see you guys at the 50% mark, and we'll see what we think. But so far, I am liking it. Hello guys, I am back, and I am officially at the 50% mark of this book. Oh my god, so much has fucking happened. It is like crazy town over here. Okay, first of all, I did not realize, yet again, I don't know how this keeps happening to me, the things that I don't realize till I'm like literally in deep already, but I did not realize that Ghost Camera was going to be multiple stories. I thought it was going to be just the one because the synopsis on it is only this one specific story. So it's not. It's multiple short stories. I guess the first one, Ghost Camera, because she republished it, it obviously was the front runner, and it was a longer piece. So due to that fact, I didn't realize there was going to be other stories involved in it. So what I'm going to do first is right now update about the story that I was talking about, which did continue for another several chapters. So it was like the chunk of what this is, from what I understand. But we found out some shit about the Ghost Camera. Okay, we found out that when you take a picture of the Ghost Camera, it's basically opening up a line of communication between the person that is the ghost and the person taking the photo. And what ends up happening is, depending on how many photos you take, is how much the ghost sees you. And once it sees you and it tracks you, it will eventually come and get you. And it either is days, weeks, months, but you will be killed by the ghosts. And Richard, the guy who is the expert, ends up coming to their house and explaining the situation to them. And he says, look, I've dealt with this before. I've tried to help other people before. There is absolutely nothing that I can do. I'm so sorry. But the more pictures you take, the worse it gets. And you know when you're about to die when they start to touch you. And right before this happened, Jeannie was feeling, Jeannie, I'm like, I had to look for a minute. Jeannie is feeling touched, so she knows she's getting closer. But Bree, because she only took one picture, she will die, but she will die in weeks versus right now. So they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out what to do, but the ghosts are coming for her, and there's nowhere safe. She starts seeing stuff, hallucinating. Photos start turning into grotesque images. There are ghosts everywhere in the world, and now everywhere they see her and they go for her. She ends up getting hurt by a ghost, like very badly, bleeding and bite marks. They take, oh my god, Bree tries to take her to a hospital, and she's like, something is telling me this is a bad idea. Why is my insides like shaking about the idea? Come to find out, well, of course it's a bad idea, because a hospital, how many people have died in a hospital? So like it's kind of like a swarm situation, almost like a zombie swarm. Like they just start chasing the car, and they chase the car, and they get into a horrible car accident, and Bree and her are almost dying in the car. And there has been a ghost throughout this entire time. I didn't talk about him because he was mentioned here, there, and everywhere, but I kind of mentioned him about, there was a little boy who apparently died in the lighthouse, and this was his Polaroid camera. This little boy is showed in all the photos as well, but unlike the rest of them who look scary or like they want to eat her and Bree, he's different. Come to find out, this was his camera, and when he sees what's going on, he breaks the camera. And because he is a part of that world, him destroying the camera works and actually destroys it completely and cuts it out. And it is assumed that due to the fact that he had the camera and he saw these creatures coming at him, he could not save himself, or he jumped to save himself. So now that he is a ghost trapped in that plane, he's doing everything he can to help them when nobody helped him. So they end up getting helped, and because they get helped, everything goes back to normal, more or less. They're in the hospital, they have scratches, they're injured, but everybody is okay. Jeannie ends up being okay, Bree ends up being okay, and Richard ends up being okay, because Richard got hurt at one point trying to help them. So we see that, and I'm like, okay, hey, wait a minute, we still have a whole chunk of book left. What the hell's gonna happen? Come to find out, there are short stories afterwards. We had one about a graveyard involving, we don't know the time frame, but we do know it's probably the early 1900s. They're talking about being very poor and having coins as far as money goes, and having carriages and that kind of vibe. And there's this guy who is unnamed, we just know he is a man, who is working for another guy named Peter, and they're grave robbers. And they do this and they make money and they sell it to like medical schools. And there they are, doing what they normally do, but they realize the one guy who is unnamed realizes the grave is smaller. It is of a child that died 2 weeks before. There's a witch in the town that says that they can bring him back, but when they find the body, it's already like kind of awake, kind of dead, some in between land. And he's like, I'm just going to get this body where it has to go to sleep, come back to my 3 children, and just kind of pretend that this horror that I have witnessed isn't real. That is a very short story. It is about like a chapter. And then there is another story which I thought was great called The Death Birds. Oh my God, fantastic, about how there's this epidemic that has happened, and it's been for the last 20 years, that every so often birds will show up, and they call them the death birds. They don't know why they come, but they are the sign that death is coming soon. And it takes place within a hospital. One of the guys' name is Ryan. He works the hospital in ER, and his friend Trace. And they try to figure out like why this happens, examine the birds, and all of a sudden they realize that birds are starting to show up at the hospital. And it's 1 bird, 2 bird, 20 birds, 70 bird, 80 birds. So they start evacuating the hospital, thinking there's going to be a calamity, like there's going to be some horrible thing that happens, and we need to make sure that everybody who's stable here, like we have room to take these people. Now, Ryan had been in some trauma as a child where there was something with his parents. His parents ended up seeing these death birds and freaking out and assuming they were going to go for them, like just the panic and the mayhem of something new happening, and they tried to themselves and him. They ended up not making it. He ended up surviving because they tried to give him meds like to fall asleep so like he wouldn't get hurt, and he survived. So he has a lot of trauma with survivor's guilt, living, and all these things happening. And then you begin to realize, and it is kind of creepy, he realizes, wait a minute, there's more birds showing up and more birds showing up, but it's 8 o'clock, it's 9 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock, it's 11, like nobody's coming to the hospital. And then he realizes, oh my God, it's us, the people who work the hospital. There's something wrong here. And then there is an explosion, like a gas main blows or something within the hospital, and everything falls apart. Hundreds and hundreds of people die, including his friend Trace, who he tries to save. But he even says the birds don't mean that somebody is going to die. It is an omen, like a prep. Like just because something is there doesn't mean you can't fix it. You can't try to intervene. And once again, he tries to save his friend. It doesn't work, but he survives. So he has now survived these 2 close call moments in his life, one with his parents and now one with the hospital. And both times the birds look him right in the eye, which apparently is a sign that they're going to come for you. Because once the person is dead, they like eat a certain part of the body that does something. We don't exactly know what, but the birds stare at him, look at him, and then like don't want him. So it's like he has a weird connection with the bird. It's so good. I am probably not doing it justice how good it is, how well written it is, how absolutely terrifying and creepy it is. The twist of like it's us, like we're trying to like make everything else good, when in reality, like you look at a hospital and you see all the people coming in, never realizing the issue could be the doctors and people themselves. Unless you watch a show like Grey's Anatomy or ER, where people like that always end up getting fucked up. In the reality of the situation, that doesn't happen. It's usually the people going to the hospital, not the people that work in the hospital. So I enjoyed that twist. I thought it was really good. It is a little like crazy because now there's another short story that we just started in the collection of a house. I'm not going to go over every short story because the next time I check in will be the end, and I obviously didn't realize that these were a bunch of short story collections. I love short stories, first of all. Love them. I love horror short stories, and I have read a short story collection from Darcy Coates. I'm actually looking at it right now. It is called Small Horrors. Check that out. That is a fantastic horror collection. It's great. I do recommend not audio for that, physical, because to read that is just, it's like Eric LaRocca kind of good. Like, it's really great. And if you don't know who Eric LaRocca is, check him out too. He's another horror writer that does short stories that's like so fantastic. I love it. And he's so nice too. I talk to him every so often on Instagram, and he is like the sweetest guy as well. If you hear screaming in the background, that is my child who is way outside with his dad. They are wrestling boys. Boys, I tell you. I'm the only girl. Bunch of boys. But I am loving it so far. It's really good. I didn't know, like I said, it was going to be short stories, but it's great. So the next time I see you, it'll be the ending, and we'll talk about some of the short stories, obviously, but more or less I'm just going to kind of give you a rating of what I'm thinking it is, because I don't know how many more short stories there are. We already have had 3. We're about to have another one, so 4, and I still have 6 or 7 chapters left, so each chapter presumably will be another story, but I'm loving it so far. It's really well done. The stories are great. The characters are great. The writing is very horrific and lots of tension. You just feel tension very heavy in this book. And when they do talk about the gruesomeness, the horror element, the ghosts, the birds, it's done so well, like visually. Like you can just see what's happening, and Darcy Coates is wonderful at doing that in horror. Wonderful. That's why she's one of my favorite horror writers ever. Could not wait for October for this. Could not. And I'm really happy I didn't, because I'm really loving it. And considering the last couple books I've read haven't been like the best books, like personally, I'm really happy with this. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a 5. I don't know yet. But I highly doubt it'll be a 3. So I'll say that much. But I will see you guys in a little bit when I am completely finished. See you then. Hi guys, I am back to talk about the ending of Ghost Camera. So good. Legitimately so good. So many freaking stories. There ended up being a hell of a lot more stories, about like 10 stories above what I was already talking about. All of them were so good, so creepy, really stayed with me. 2 of them scared the absolute shit out of me, that my husband came in the room, I didn't hear him, and I started to scream. One, I thought I saw something behind me. It was my cat, and I literally just like lost my mind because I was just so into the story, but also absolutely terrified. Also, this I'm listening to in audio, and let me tell you, the audiobook, it sells it, baby. If you're going to do this book, you have to do the audio. I'm not kidding. So many different stories. We had one about the hospital, was the last one that I talked to you guys about. Then we had one about a haunted house, one about VHS tapes, one about a church, one with a campground legend. It was so, a plane. There were so many different ones, and those are just the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. There were like 2 or 3 other ones as well that like my brain's just like knocking around in here, but they were so good. The writing was amazing, as it always is with Darcy Coates. I have never had a book that didn't do well. I was surprised, like I said, about the fact that this was like multiple stories, because the way it is marketed was that it was just the one. But I'll be honest with you, I thoroughly enjoyed it. There was not one of the stories that I didn't like. And when I think of a short story collection, if you like half, that's a success. To like every single one of them, that's so rare and doesn't happen often. I think that's happened with a couple of books for me, short story collections. It happened with Small Horrors by Darcy Coates, actually, that I knew was a short story collection. And it happens anytime I read an Eric LaRocca book. His horror, the way he talks, like he's another one that it's always banging for me. I'm always going to love it. So I don't think that this is going to be a hard thing to understand when I tell you what I rated this book. It's a 5, baby. I loved this book. It was so good. It was so good that my husband, who is a lot of things, a reader is not one of them. He is just not a reader. He hears me talk about all the books. Like, that's what he does. He listens and he nods. But when I was telling him about this and all the stories and these little parts, I didn't tell him everything, but I told him a good amount. And he was like, I want to read it. That sounds really fucking good. And now after I'm done, he's going to read it. I got someone that doesn't really read to want to read it. That's how good it is. And funny enough, the only other author he does that with when I recommend a book is Eric LaRocca. Again, like they're just coming together now. That's how my horror is. I love horror, and I'm getting so in the mood for October. I'm so excited. This was a 5. I loved every character. I was interested in every story. I was scared shitless multiple times. They were all different. Nothing felt like repetitive. Nothing felt the same. And that is something I can say about Darcy Coates. I have read many of her books. They're all different. None of them are the same. It's very Stephen King-esque as well, where it's, you know, people sometimes will be like, oh, you know, he says the same things. He actually fucking doesn't. He doesn't redo his works ever. Yes, they're all horror. Yes, they're all very long, but that was my cat. I literally almost screamed. As I said, terrified. My cat just jumped. I'm still jittery from the book. Fantastic book. You have to check it out. You're going to absolutely love this. I finished this in a matter of hours. I could not put this down. I kind of want to reread it already, which is insane that I want to do that so fast. Like super fast. Like I just finished it. Well, I loved it. It was great. You have to check it out. And this was a 5-star. Yay! I'm so happy to have a 5-star because last week we we had a good time. But then towards the end of the week, it was going a little, you know, with the books. I was getting a lot of 3s. I'm happy that we're getting a 5. That's a good start. The next book I'm going to read, I have really high hopes for it too. I will talk about that when you see me next, but I'll see you guys very soon. Hi guys, I told you guys you would see me very soon. You're seeing me again in like 5 seconds. Here we are, and here I am talking about the next book that I'm going to be reading. We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer? I am so sorry if I'm saying that last name wrong. I know I said Marcus right. Know that. But this is called We Used to Live Here. I am super excited for this book. I've heard really good things about it. A lot of booktube is talking about it, reading it. A lot of people are waiting for October. Nay. I want to do it now because I'm super excited. Also, I've been waiting for my copy to be available, and it was supposed to be available last week, and it just became available today. So I finished one book to get into the next book. What do I know about it so far? I know that it's about a couple, Charlie and Eve. They are a lesbian couple, and they have a house together. They just moved into the new house, and they get a knock on the door one day. Ding-a-ding-a-ding. The door opens, and they are the people who used to live there. And they say, hey, I'm so sorry. Can we look around? You know, we used to live here a while ago. We want to check out the place. And whoever answers the door, Charlie or Eve, is like, I feel awkward. Okay, fine. And from what I'm gathering, then shit becomes weird. It's awkward. It's tension. They don't want to leave. There's some weird shit with the house. Are they alive? Are they dead? Is this a ghost thing? I don't know, but it's supposed to be really good. And that is what I'm going to read next. So I'm so excited to check it out. I am going to start reading that tomorrow. And I will update you when I'm at the 10% mark. And I know what the fuck I'm talking about far better than I do right now. I'll see you guys then. Hi guys, it's Megan, and I am back to talk about We Used to Live Here. I am officially 10% into the book. It's something. It's so weird. It's weird. It's unsettling. It feels awkward. I am loving it. For somebody who has anxiety, this book is ringing very true for me. Let's go and talk about what it is so far and what we know so far. Okay, there's Eve and there's Charlie. They are in a relationship. They are lesbians. They live together. They are not married. Charlie doesn't really believe in marriage. I'm getting the idea that Eve does not either, but I'm not really sure. She was raised religious at one point. We just learned that. So that could have something to do with it. You never know. They just bought this beautiful house together that's a fixer-upper about 2 months ago. Eve is waiting for Charlie to get home. There's a snowstorm outside. It's very windy, very freezing, not the best weather. And somebody rings the bell. She goes to the door, and there is a man there with his family, his wife, his 2 sons and his very young daughter. And he basically says, hi, I'm sure you're the new owner. This is probably the weirdest thing you've ever heard, but I used to live here. I lived here when I was a kid. We're driving by on the way to our new home, and I told the kids, and I was wondering, is there any way I could check it out? Now, Eve is a woman after my own heart, because she's very anxious about things, but she also has a problem saying no to people and upsetting people, and she usually calls Charlie to do all the dirty work for her. But Charlie's not answering her phone, and she basically is like, no, this isn't the right time. But the little girl, Jenny, is getting really upset because she wants to see the house that her daddy has talked about, and she's a daddy's girl. You can tell by the vibe. And they're about to leave, and Eve just feels really bad and guilty, and she's got this voice in the back of her head basically like, no, you know what, I feel bad for this family, they came all this way. But she's also very aware of things. She's somebody that her whole life has always felt like something bad was going to happen, and she's always been on the lookout for it. She sees outside, like, where's their car? Their car's not here. And he basically says, oh, we parked a couple blocks away, and it's like, it's snowing. Like, she feels unsettled by it, but at the same time she's like, oh, it's probably just my brain, you know, being hyper aware because of my anxiety, which I get it. Okay, I get it. I'm a very anxious lady myself, and I'm always thinking the worst case scenarios. It might be all the horror films I've watched my whole life, who knows. I'm gonna blame the horror films. It's just easier to blame that than this thing right here. So Eve is basically like, fuck, I feel bad. Okay, guys, you want to come in for 15 minutes, take a check out. Like, my wife, my partner is what they say more. They never say wife. My partner is going to be home very soon. So fine, go ahead, look around if you must. And they're searching around, they're looking at the house. He's showing them like, oh, this is where your my sister's room was. Mom was a painter. Grandma, dad, you know, was weird in his study. And you can tell pretty easily that Thomas is a little happy to be there, but also unsettled to be there. He actually takes a moment and he steps away from his family and basically asks Eve, like, have you noticed anything weird in this house? Anything odd? But he doesn't seem like he exactly wants to share or overshare. He's just kind of making her aware of a weird situation. They go through the rest of the house, and it was a very old build apparently, and they had a dumbwaiter, and the dumbwaiter has been covered up, and the little girl Jenny is like, this is so exciting, a dumbwaiter, like, can we see the basement? Can we look at the other parts of the house? And Eve has this weird thing about the basement. She doesn't like basements in general since she was a kid, but she's really weird about their basement. They have lived there for 2 months, and she's actually never been down there yet, or their attic. She's like very freaked out about those locations in the house. And she basically is like, no, let's not and say we did. Okay, Jenny, sorry for your little trouble, kid. And the kid ends up getting very upset and sneaks off, finds the dumbwaiter, opens it, goes into the basement to explore. Let me tell you something. The anxiety in me, and also the fact that I'm not the biggest, like, people, you know, lover of like a big group of people together, especially people I don't know, I'd be like, let's call the police. Okay, the kid's in the basement. It's weird. Now the parents are trying to go into the basement and find their kid. The mother, Paige, is very like, I'm so sorry, I'm so apologetic. She does this thing where she's in a new place and she wants to explore everything. She likes to play hide and seek. And, you know, we've recently moved, and I think it's triggering some trauma for her, and, you know, all the excuses that you give kids for doing weird fucking shit. And Eve's like, oh no, I just want to be home alone with my partner and my dog, and now all you people are in my fucking house. Okay, fine, let's find the kid. And Thomas, the father, is more or less like, leave her be, give her 15-20 minutes, she'll come out on her own. She'll be embarrassed, like, just let it be. This is something that happens. The 2 older brothers are like, yeah, our sister's fucking weird, sorry guys, this is what happens. So now they're all in the house, not knowing what to do, waiting for this kid. Charlie comes through the door being like, there's a huge snowstorm outside, they're closing down streets. And Eve's like, God, give them their coats, let them go. Like, I don't even care if they take the kid anymore. Well, keep the kid, just get out. You guys are weird and you're in my house, and it's awkward. And the mother is odd. She doesn't talk much. She's very stilted conversation. You can tell her and her husband are having some issues. It's kind of implied that they're moving because of his job. She doesn't want to move. We also get the vibe that she's very religious. It's talked about briefly. And they more or less, Charlie feels bad and is like, look, my brother used to do this too, like hide and shit. Like, don't worry about it. It's a thing that kids do. They get over it eventually. Why not we all eat dinner together and she'll come out and it won't be so traumatic for everybody. And more or less they all agree and they're like, thank you, that's so sweet of you. Okay, they're sitting, they're eating dinner, they're all talking. Paige, this mom, she be judgy-wudgy was a bear. She basically tells them, like, does your parents know about your lifestyle choices? I saw a Bible in the hall, and let's pray over our meals. And not to say that there's anything wrong with being religious. It's perfectly fine to be religious. What it's not fine to be is a judgmental asshole. That's not okay. And to be homophobic. Not a fan of the homophobes. No, thank you very much. And she definitely is that. We also see that she has, I think it's going to play somewhere in it, she has, like right here, a tattoo that's been laser removed off, and Charlie notices it, and she's basically like, oh yeah, you know, when you're young and crazy and the things you do. But the whole time, you just get such an unsettling vibe. Nothing feels right. Everything feels weird. Everything feels tense. It's a bunch of strangers stuck together in this moment in a place that Thomas used to live. The conversation is stilted. Then Paige is being homophobic, and Charlie is the kind of partner that's very much like, go ahead, I want to correct you. I want to make you cry. That kind of person. I like Charlie personally. Where Eve is more like, oh God, let's just not have this conversation. Let's look anywhere else. Let's ignore it. Let's make excuses for our guests' behavior, even though these are not guests I wanted in my fucking house, but fine. And Charlie basically is like, does your family know about your lifestyle choice of, you know, having a child and being a bitch? Which I enjoyed that part very much. But finally, Jenny comes out of hiding, crying, and is like, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done this. And her mother yells at her, which I'll give that. Yeah, yell at her. I'd yell at her too and be like, this is embarrassing. Look at what you've done. We don't even know these people. How odd and strange do we seem? Ugh. And they pack up their shit and they're like, okay, we're going to go. We're gonna leave. So sorry. Thomas is like, thank you for letting me see this house. Oh my God. Hey, here's my card. I have blueprints for what this house used to be if you ever want to know anything about the house. It's also said that when they bought the house, they knew nothing about the owners. There were no information given to them. The house was in disrepair and a wreck. And also there's like no backgrounds, no anything, no blueprints, no nothing. So Thomas lived here. We don't know when he lived here. Charlie asks and it kind of gets like pushed away. So I'm like, oh. We also know that he takes some kind of medication because he takes a bunch of pills at one point, saying to the little girl, like, oh, it's Tic Tacs, like you can't have this. But Eve notices they look like pharmaceuticals, like maybe something for depression or some kind of medication. So I'm wondering, oh my God, is he psychotic? Are you about to learn that? Like, but he does know so much about the house, like, oh, this was here and this was here and things. So he obviously did live there. Like, he knows where everything is. So I'm not getting the vibe of that. I don't know what I'm about to read though. Like, now there's a storm. Charlie like shows Eve like, hey, the bridges are closed, which probably means this family is going to come back and stay the night. Because Eve is such a sweet, nice person, and she's not going to know how to say no. Also, they have children with them. Jenny is like 8 or 10, and the 2 kids are teenagers. So it's like, screw, okay, maybe you don't like the parents, or you don't like the mom. Because Thomas seems okay. He seems a little odd, but he's fine. He's not rude or mean or anything. He's very apologetic for the situation that he's, you know, put them in. But I don't know. I have bad vibes. So far, the writing is great. I love the characters. I love the vibes. I'm doing audiobook for this. The audiobook is wonderful. Also, there's this weird thing that every other chapter, it's like a fax that goes through. And it's like something about the past. And I'm going to assume it's involved with Thomas's past because Thomas talks about, like, I had a dog and da-da-da-da. And then the fax afterwards is talking about like the dog and the dog being given away because the son had a problem and all this stuff, and you hear fax noises. It's so fun. It's a fun audiobook. It has sound effects and everything. I dig it. It's great. It's great. But guess what? I'm gonna get back to it because I'm loving it right now, and I cannot wait to check in with you guys at the 50% mark and give you all the good information that I've learned. See you then. Hi guys, I am back at the 50% mark of We Used to Live Here. this book is insane. First of all, there's my husband right there in the background. He is you obviously can see him, so there he is. It's his day of rest, so he is video gaming. This book is crazy. I don't exactly know what I'm reading, and I fucking love that I don't. Obviously horror, obviously creepy. What is obviously happening? I don't know exactly. So let me go from where we were, okay? Because I feel like I updated not that long ago, and yet so much happened and then not enough happened. So this is going to be a weird update, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to go together. We're going to meet somewhere and understand this, because it's a lot. Where we left off, the people had left. Thomas and his family had left, but the snowstorm happened. Charlie was like, look, they ended up coming back. They stayed over the night. It was weird. Charlie and Eve were talking, and Eve was like, there's something about them. I know, they unsettle me. Like, I don't feel right. But Eve is kind of neurotic. She's always anxious. She's always afraid if she's seeing this or she's seeing that. So Charlie is not taking it with any like degree of reality. She's just like, you're just being a little much, which you always are. Like, okay, hey, Paige, the wife, is a little weird, but the rest of them are very, like, you know, unassuming, very relaxed. Doesn't seem like it'll be anything. Well, then that night, they hear these sounds coming from outside their house. It's snowing, obviously. It's horrible. That's why these people had to come back and stay, because the roads were closed. And there's Thomas, crying like a baby in the fetal position in the snow. Like, I didn't mean to. Oh no. And Charlie comes up to him and realizes, oh my God, he's sleepwalking. And he's like, Charlie says to Thomas, like, it's okay, come with me, and wakes him up, and he apologizes, and he says, I'm so sorry, this hasn't happened since I was a kid. Maybe it's being back here, it's triggered something in my brain. He said, I used to sleepwalk, and I used to have sleep paralysis as a kid, but my parents were very religious and were like, pray the demons away, and that whole nonsense. And he said, you know, obviously I tried that method. It didn't work. He said, but by the time I was a teenager, and I learned what was causing these things, these sleep paralysis and night terrors, I ended up growing out of it. I haven't had this since I was like 12 or 13 years old. And since they're all there talking, and his wife is asleep, his family is asleep upstairs, Eve asks him, you know, you brought up something about, like, is this house weird to you? And I explained that to my partner, Charlie, and she was like, oh, it's probably nothing, but I got the sense you wanted to tell me something, but you didn't know how to maybe say it. You seemed a little nervous. And Thomas was like, yeah, I grew up here as a kid, me and my older sister, Allison. And it was really, some weird stuff started happening. You know, the first couple of years we lived here, nothing out of the ordinary. And then one day Allison said, you know, where we hung our coats, the thing that we hung our coats on, it was a different color. And we all thought she was joking. But we're like, okay, white and gray are very similar. You know, it's a weird little coincidence. Then all of a sudden she said paintings were showing up in her room, paintings that weren't there before. And me and my mom and my dad were like, no, Mom painted that painting forever ago. And then she started to be convinced that her family wasn't really her family. They were like pods, like fake people for the real ones. And she started to, not feel safe and hear things, and all these weird things started to happen. And then he basically stopped talking about it and was like, and Charlie is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, obviously your sister had a mental illness. And he says, yeah, my parents tried to ignore it because they were very religious. As I said, with my sleep paralysis situation, they just thought she could pray it away. And when that didn't happen and that didn't work, we left. We ended up moving. Now, we don't know if they moved at the same time. We have no idea what happened to Allison. So that's weird. He ends up going back upstairs to his family and saying, I'm so sorry, but like, that's what I was talking about, something weird in the house. I always wondered, was it my sister just like mentally maybe not so sound, or was there really something happening, and I was just too young to really understand what was happening in the house. He goes back upstairs. Charlie and Eve go to sleep. Eve wakes up at 3 in the morning, and she goes in the basement. The basement door's open. She thinks Jenny, the little girl again, is probably down there. So she sees this tiny figure. She starts talking to it like, look, you should go back to bed with your mommy and your daddy. And it stands up, and it ain't little, baby. It's this monster looking thing. She runs upstairs, locks the door, wakes up Charlie. Charlie doesn't believe her. Believe your partner. Please, guys, just believe your partner. It's fucking weird. She doesn't believe her, and she's like, look, we've been drinking. We've had a crazy night. You're still probably half asleep, and you probably saw the dog, or you saw this, or you saw, and you just imagined it bigger. You've done this for so many years. Eve, go to sleep. Okay, we'll talk about this in the morning. She wakes up in the morning, and Charlie's gone. She goes downstairs, and there's the family, and they're cooking breakfast in her fucking house. Like, it's nothing, like with the paper and laughing and joking, and she's like, where's my partner? Where's Charlie? And Thomas is like, oh, she said that we could use the kitchen, make a breakfast, and then we were going to head out because the snow had stopped and we can leave. And she said she had some crazy errand to run and she had to leave. And Eve is immediately taken aback because she's like, why wouldn't she tell me? Like, you are strangers in my home. She would just leave me here asleep upstairs when she knows I feel weird about this whole situation to begin with. But she looks and she can't find Charlie. Her car is gone. Her coat is gone. Her boots are gone. All evidence that she did go where she said. But the day before, Eve had broken her cell phone. So she's like, I can't use my phone. Guys, can one of you guys give me a phone? Apparently in their church group, they are not using any technology for the next month. And when the situation is over, the preacher's going to send them back their phones. Eve does not believe this. She feels really weird. She doesn't like how comfortable they're getting in her house. And the teenage boys are like trying to look through her boxes. It's fucking weird. And Eve, like, her anxiety of being rude is gone by this point. She's like, I'm going to go find out what's going on with my partner. I'm going to go to the neighbors and use a phone and figure this shit out. During this whole time, though, we also have chapters back and forth of a different time and people on message boards and people talking about things. And one thing that's being talked about, which is, I think, is fascinating, because me and my husband, there he is, have actually talked about this before, the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect, if you're not aware of it, is things that we perceive did happen, but in reality didn't. It's like this false cognitive memory that groups of people seem to have. Like the Bernstein Bears are really the Bainstein Bears. That Mandela actually died in prison, but he didn't. He actually died in the 2000s. It's these memories that we believe happened as a cognitive group. And that's why it's called the Mandela effect. And that ends up being talked about because there's a message board about this toy. And being like, oh my God, remember this toy monkey? Da-da-da-da-da. Come to find out the company never existed. Some people have a memory of this toy, but the company says we never made this toy. It's this whole thing. But how it connects to what's going on now is, I didn't mention it earlier because I didn't think it was going to be anything of interest, honestly. I had explained that Eve has this situation where she gets anxiety. She gets this fear. She has this little voice in her head. But the voice in her head, she named it something to give name to the anxiety. She named it Mo. And she named it after her favorite toy monkey she had as a kid that she lost. The toy monkey is what this whole message board system is about, talking about this toy that never existed. Very creepy. Really freaking weird. Then she ends up, in the now, going to her neighbor's house, finding the neighbor. First of all, the dog and the neighbor love each other, which is really weird because apparently her dog is a rescue dog and doesn't like anybody except for Charlie and Eve. The woman's name is Heather. She's an older woman, and she basically says, oh, you are our new neighbor. You're my new neighbor. It's very nice to meet you. Da, da, da. She goes into the house, and one of the things she sees is the monkey toy that apparently doesn't exist. And she says, oh, that was my grandson's toy, like he loves this toy. And she's like, I looked this toy up for years and wanted to like rebuy it as an adult, and I never found it. And really weird. I don't know where we're going with this. It's starting to make me think like maybe the reality we're seeing isn't the reality we're seeing. Then she tells Heather, can I use your phone? Heather says, yeah, go ahead. I have a rotary phone. How old is that shit? Jesus Christ. And she goes and she uses the rotary phone. She calls Charlie. She answers. Hi. Eve, but she's like annoyed that Eve has called her, and she's like, what do you want? Like, it's very weird, the phone call, and the phone is breaking up. And apparently wherever Charlie is, she's talking to somebody else in the background, and she can hear mumbling. And I have this suspicion that when she woke up, time changed or something shifted, and Charlie and her aren't even together anymore. Like, Charlie is in this different relationship, this different life, because she's not like, hey, I love you, how are you? It's like, hi, Eve, why are you calling me? Like, why wouldn't I call you? You left me with fucking strangers today, and where are you? And what's happening? It's friggin' weird. So I'm like, maybe that there's something with that. Meanwhile, she gets off the phone and is like, that's weird, hangs up. Okay, something's up with that. We'll figure that out later, I guess. And Heather says like, oh, the house that you're living in, is that da-da-da house? I can't remember what the last name was, but it was Thomas's house as a child. And she says, yes, actually, weirdly enough, he came to visit the other day to see where he used to live. And she's like, oh my God, I knew him as a boy. So now Eve's like, I want to know some shit about this guy. He's in my home. This whole thing is really weird. I'm feeling awkward. And this is someone who seems very nice, let me in the house. My dog seems to like. She's older, like a grandmotherly situation, so she's not afraid or nervous by her whatsoever. And she's like, can you tell me some stuff about him and his sister? And then Heather says, what sister? And she says, well, his sister Allison. You know, he had told me a story, you know, about his sister. And he's like, well, he never had a sister. There was a girl, I don't know what her name is. Maybe it was Allison, since that's the name you're telling me, that just ran up to the property one day. No one knew where she came from. No one knew anything about her. And the family, Thomas's family, took her in and raised her like their own, but they were never related, like blood related whatsoever. And it happened when he was like 7 or 8 years old. So he didn't grow up like with her till that point, but maybe he felt like, that's my sister. So she's still like weird a little, but okay, you know, stepsisters, whatever. Like, if that's your sibling, some people, you know, it doesn't matter. So it's like, okay, fine. Maybe I'm just reading more into it. And he goes, you know, they moved after the incident. And it's like, what incident? And it's like, oh my God, it was Allison, because of her mental state. And she talks to Heather about that, about like, oh yeah, Thomas had mentioned that his sister was seeing things and hearing things and thinking the house was changing and all this stuff. And she was like, yeah, do you know anything else? And she's like, no. What else am I supposed to know? And it's like, well, there was an incident where Allison thought the only way to stop her seeing these things was to hurt somebody, and she took a pen and stabbed Thomas 37 times. And I'm like, well, that part was not put in the story. You were talking about your sister like she was a lovey-dovey wonderful person and you guys were super close. She tried to kill you. We've missed that whole fucking part of the story, didn't we now? And I'm just like, oh, this is so unsettling. This is creeping me the fuck out. These people are also, as she's talking to Heather, they're still at her house, like having coffee and tea. It's like, oh my God, how are we going to get these people out of your house? And where's Allison? And Heather basically says, oh, I have no idea, like, where she went. I'm probably a psych ward, maybe dead. Like, who knows whatever ended up happening. But the family sold their house and moved. And that's why they moved. So it's like, why would Thomas want to come back here? Why would he want this memories? Why would he want to show his kids this? Like, show him the room where he got stabbed 37 times? Something doesn't sit right. This is what I'm thinking. The book is called We Used to Live Here. I think we're in a Mandela effect world or something, where everything is starting to come together. The past and the present and future and what could be, what couldn't be. And it's all going to somehow end up being together, because things are happening that are friggin' weird. And I don't think she and Charlie are together anymore. And she woke up and everything changed. I think these people are never leaving her house, and slowly she's going to go back to the house because she's still on her way going back from Heather's, and they're going to be like, we live here. What are you talking about? You don't live here. That's what I think is going to happen, and I think either Heather is going to help them or hurt the situation. But I think she's going to help. I think she's going to work with Eve to figure out the truth, and there's going to be some reveals. Also, it's assumed that Heather has somebody in her house, like, watching. I am so unsettled by this book. I'm creeped out. That's my kid screaming in the background. I am insanely creeped out. So I cannot wait to read more of this and check in with you when I'm done with everything. It's nuts. I'm really loving it so far. What if this is another 5? Because our last book was a 5. Don't get too excited. Don't get ahead of yourself here. We still have a whole half of a book. I will see you guys soon, and I'll tell you what I thought at the end. If I come back and I'm just like, then some shit happened. So I'll see you guys soon. Bye. Hi guys, I am back, and I am back to talk about the ending of We Used to Live Here. It was so good. Oh my God. It was a fantastic reading experience. It was so friggin' weird. It was all over the place. It ended up dealing with things that I wasn't exactly expecting. I didn't know, like I said before, like where this was going to go. If this was going to be a bunch of crazy people, like wanting to come back in the house. Not exactly. I still don't truly know what it was, and I kind of love how ambiguous it is in all honesty, like why it is what it is, we don't really know. First of all, we come to find out that there are dual realities. I fucking love that. And Charlie, there's 2 Charlies, and there's 2 this, and there's 2 that. It's crazy. This is going to be a really hard book. I'm beginning to, like, I finished the book. Let me go back. I finished the book about an hour ago, and I've more or less been trying to figure out how to talk about the ending. I don't really know how, which is wonderful. I love that I can't exactly explain it. There's doppelgangers. There's dual realities. Thomas is in on all of this and somehow controls it all, but we don't exactly know how he does it. At one point, we actually think that Eve is insane and Eve is actually his sister, because at one point that's what's being told to us as the person who's reading the book. So we're like, is she crazy? She's doubting her own sanity, but then there are moments of such lucidity that we know that this is not what's happening. We come to find out too, all the little chapters that are in the book where it's like I told you, like these faxes of information, and we don't know what that's about. We come to find out at the end that's all Eve. Eve is in a mental institution right now because she, in the other reality that she became a part of, ended up killing Paige and trying to kill Thomas, and she didn't kill him, and she thought that if she did kill him that she would be able to go back to her actual time frame. That didn't work out well. The story of what happened ended up being in the news, especially because she keeps saying, no, like, you don't understand. My name is not Emma. My real name is Eve. These are my parents. Da-da-da. But come to find out, everything that she says, like, there's no facts. There's no paperwork. There's no trail of anything. Because in this reality, it's not the same. Like, okay, yes, there are her parents, but her parents don't know who she is. They have no idea. And yeah, she had a girlfriend named Charlie, but they broke up years ago. So it's like this twisted reality that happens, and it's good. It is creepy. It is scary. There is high tension. It makes you doubt your own sanity. It makes you doubt what you're seeing, what is real, what is not real. It's obviously a paranormal universe, but we don't exactly know the whole, like, extent of it. And I love that too, because now we know the title of, like, We Used to Live Here. It's not just that Thomas used to live here. It's not just that his sister used to live there. It's that she used to live there. Charlie used to live there. And at the very end of the book, we find Charlie, the one that's from that actual relationship, being like, I'm looking for my partner. Everybody says she doesn't exist. Everybody says I'm crazy, but I know I'm not crazy. This is a real thing. I was really with this woman. and like it does kind of go into the Mandela effect, like I was talking about earlier, of like we assume one thing when in reality it's another, and it's like a twist on that thought of the Mandela effect, which I think is so interesting for a horror book to do, and a thriller. I mean, we've seen enough horror films for sure where someone's stuck in a different reality or stuck in a different time frame. The movie I keep thinking about, which does that and messes with the time frame, is a indie movie called Eloise. It does that a lot in it, where it's like back and forth in time, and then the time frames interlap, and when they interlap, the reality gets switched. That's like kind of the vibe that I'm getting. And that's, for whatever reason, the first movie that pops into my head is that one, when I'm thinking of like that kind of idea. I don't think I see that too often in books, but like I said, movies for sure. I loved Eve so much. She was a badass, but she was also... It's so crazy because you can see where the reality is, or the reality that is being portrayed to us. Like, she's crazy at one point. It's like, well, she is very anxious. Well, come on, if you were somebody else hearing all of these things, this is insane. This would never happen in real life. Why would these strangers just show up at your house? Why would all of it? And come to find out, it's just like they've always been there. Oh, it's so creepy. I know that I am not explaining this well, and I am not doing it justice, but I just think it's one of those books where maybe you can't explain it. You just have to enjoy it. You just have to open up that book, listen to that audiobook, and just live in it, because it is a show, man. It's a world. I love the ending. The ending is not by any means a happy ending, and yet I loved it, and yet I was satisfied. The horror itch totally got scratched, and the ending I thought was great. I loved everything about this book. I like the things that I'm still thinking about in the book. Like Allison, the sister, and the fact that she was... We come to find out that Allison really was the real daughter of that family that lived in that house, and Thomas was never real. Thomas was the person that came out of nowhere and ended up infiltrating her family to the point that her family believed that she was like an outsider. And I'm like, what kind of powers or like manipulation, what kind of insanity do you have to be able to do that? And it's so interesting. And we hear and see like redacted documents of like whose mom is this and whose kid is this and all this facts, and it's like, what the fuck am I reading? It's crazy. It's just so crazy. But it's a ride, man, and it's fucking fun. It's fun. I finished this in a couple of hours. I was doing like cleaning around the house and organizing, and I had the audio on, and I swear sometimes I wish I could film myself like when I'm doing tasks so you guys could see, because at one point I was dusting and I was like, what the fuck? What happened? Huh? What? Because I was like, I had to actually go back in the audiobook because there was a twist situation with the dual realities, like I said, and the doppelgangers, which I was not even thinking it was going to be that kind of book. I really thought this was going to be a straightforward horror. Like, these people come to this house. They used to live there. They don't want to leave. Like, I did not think there was going to be supernatural situations, which I still don't fully understand. And yet I like that I don't know. Like, usually that would annoy me. Like, the monster being so ambiguous. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of whatever this is and whatever this guy Thomas can do. Cause I don't know what I can do, but he's weird. I feel bad that Paige died, but that's like my one thing is like, I wish we knew more about Paige, because there's another thing with the realities, which is interesting, is like, okay, here I am right now, like this. If I went to a different reality, there would be one thing that's a little different about me. And the one thing that seems to be different about the people when they go to a different reality, at least as of now, is like one version will have a tattoo and the other won't. Like, for instance, can you see it? I have a tattoo right here. Like, in the other reality, I wouldn't have one. That would be the only thing that would like separate us. And I'm like, that's... But you have the outline as if you did have it. So it's like a messed up copy. But the copy also has all of your memories and knows who you are. Oh, it's so... The pod people. It's so creepy. And I gotta tell you, this author, I'm slow clapping because it was done so well. I loved it. I super duper enjoyed it. And I don't think this should be a surprise, guys. What am I going to rate this book? A 5. Of course I'm going to rate it a 5. It was horror. It was thriller. Tension, suspense, amazing characters, great writing, amazing twists, things done in a way I didn't expect. A monster that is monstrous and yet ambiguous, which I hope I'm using this word right. Watch, I'll find out I'm using it totally wrong, but whatever. Crazy, okay? It's just, it was amazing. The writing was great. Characters were great. The twists were great. I loved that ending. There was not one part of this book that I did not like. I liked the chapters in the middle of like old redacted documents and redacted forums. I thought that was interesting. I liked talking about the Mandela effect, talking about doppelgangers, talking about dual realities. I thought it had some very smart conversations as well. I have no idea if this book is a debut. I have no idea if this author has written many a book, but I will tell you one thing. I'm going to be on the lookout now because this was great. No wonder so many people are raving about it and reading it and loving it. I know some people aren't loving it, but I wonder, I can't help myself. Not to say I'm some intellectual whiz, because I'm fucking not. Let's just be 100% honest with each other here. I'm not. But I'm wondering if some parts of it are going over somebody's head, maybe, because a lot of it is you just have to suspend your disbelief, or really you have to think outside the box, and some people are amazing at that, and some people that's just not their forte. So I'm wondering if the people that are like, it's all right, if the dispense of disbelief is something that they're very good at, or if they like books like that, books like this that make me question, make me wonder. I love that. I'm giving this a big old 5-star. It was great. I don't have anything negative to say. I love when I don't have anything negative to say. So this is the second 5-star of this video. I'm a happy lady. I genuinely am. I will see you guys in a little bit when I'm talking about the next book I'm going to be reading. I'll see you guys then. Bye. Hi guys, I'm back. I was just with you and I'm back again to tell you the next book that I'm going to be reading. The Days I Loved You Most. I love romance books. I love a book that really makes me feel and cry. I'm a lady, you know, so I like those kinds of books too. Granted, I love horror. Horror and thriller are my favorites, but I do love a romance book, and I would say in the last 2-3 years, I've started to like them a lot more once again. I was a fan of these as a teenager, and now slowly the fandom is coming back for me. This book sounds beautiful and fucking sad and really emotional. From what I understand of the book, now granted, obviously, haven't gotten into it yet. It's about a married couple, Evelyn and Joseph, and they have been together since the 1940s, so a very long time. They've been together, if I'm not mistaken, by this point in the story plot, over 60 years. They love each other, they have a family, they have a plethora of memories and a life lived together, and one of them finds out they're going to die, that they have an incurable either disease or dementia. It's something that is going to eat away at them over a process of time. And when one of them learns that, the other one says, well, I'm not living without you, so when you go, I go, literally. And we have a year together left. And if we know we have a year together left, let's do all the things we wanted to do. Let's talk about all the things we wanted to talk about. Let's remember all the things we want. Let's become closer to our children. Let's find the closure that once we're gone, they're going to have. Which makes me feel extremely emotional when you love somebody and you have a partner and you love them so much. The idea that one of you will go and the other one will stay is this a horrifyingly sad, scary feeling. And everybody who's in a relationship, that's a fear that they have, that they're going to lose somebody that they love. So seeing these two people that are in a marriage and a committed relationship for all these years have those fears, and talk about them and deal with them and somehow try to incorporate their children into these conversations. I'm going to assume these adult children, just because they've been together for 60 years. So I would imagine their children are grown as well, and they probably have grandchildren. From what I understand too, there's going to be flashbacks of talking about like the relationship that they've had and these pivotal moments in their life, and talking about it in the presence of like, oh my God, remember when that happened, which I feel like is going to be quite emotional, because when you're in a relationship, you do that. You go back in your head and go, God, remember the first time we met, and now look at our life now, and look objectively like of all the things that we've had over this course of this relationship. So I've heard really good things about it. I heard I'm gonna cry, so I'm prepared. But it sounds good from what I know. So the next time I check in, I will be at the 10% mark, and maybe I will have red eyes and be hysterical. I don't know, but I do feel by the end of this book, I will have definitely cried at least 5 times. I was going to say once, and I'm like, no, let's be honest. Let's be honest with the fact that I am a crybaby with shit like this. So at least 5 times. Probably like 12. But we'll see. I'll see you guys at the 10% mark, and we'll see how much I've sobbed. Hi guys, I am back to talk about the days I loved you most. I am officially 10% into the book. First, let me start by saying, if I am low energy, it is because my cold that I thought was gone has turned into some kind of virus, and I have an extremely high fever. So there's that. So just letting you know that off the bat. And if I end up looking crappy, that's why I got these lights on as high as they can go, so I can look like a human being. Okay, but let's talk about the book. It's really emotional. It's really emotional. It's hitting really hard, and I'm a little over 10% because like I try to update obviously at 10%, but the chapter wasn't done yet, so I'm technically like 13% or something. But wow, it is an emotional read. The characters already, I'm super connecting with them. I'm really liking everything that's being said. I'm finding the flashbacks in time really great and fascinating. I'm really starting to get a full picture of who these characters are, and the fact that, like I said, we're so early in to get like this emotion already is amazing. But let's start for what this is about, okay? Okay. So this book is about a married couple named Evelyn and Joseph. They've been together for over 60 years, since they were kids, more or less. And what ends up happening at the very beginning of the book is Evelyn and Joseph are at a table with their kids. They have 3 children that are all grown up. Jane, Thomas, and Violet, and they're sitting at the table and they're explaining to them, like, there's something we have to tell you. We wanted you to sit down because we have decided, me and your mom, that this is going to be our last year living together. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, you're getting divorced? Like, what are you talking about? You guys have been happy forever. And it's like, no, we're ending our lives. Obviously, the 3 children get very upset. The daughters especially are just confused as to why. The son is very much like, you're insane. You're just insane. He's very practical. And he's like, this isn't practical. What do you mean? What's going on? And they weren't going to really explain why to their children till later on, but the kids basically say, did you think that we wouldn't ask? Did you think that we wouldn't badger you? Like, why would you do something like this? Like, are you sick? Are you dying? What's going on? And they have no choice but to say what's going on. Evelyn, unfortunately, got a horrible diagnosis. She's been having shaking in her hands for a while now and seen many doctors without telling her kids anything that was her kids or her grandkids what was going on. Come to find out, she has an advanced stage of Parkinson's. She's already at stage 2, and it is progressing extremely fast. Usually it can take years. It's taking months to deteriorate, and what is going to eventually happen due to her age is she is going to also get dementia and or Alzheimer's, and it is progressing very fast. And they've been to specialists, and she realizes that she's going to end up not being able to take care of herself. She's going to end up putting a quote unquote, this is her saying it, not me, burden to her family. She was a very independent person, and this is not how she wants to be remembered by her kids and she has grown grandchildren as well, and her grandchildren. This is not what she wants. And Joseph just loves her so much and has always loved her, and he's decided he's going to go too. He's going to go when she goes, and they're putting a time limit on it. They're putting 1 year, and within that 1 year, they plan to do everything that they wanted to do. Go back and visit places, have these amazing memories, really connect with their 3 children in a more real, honest way, because now everybody knows there's an expiration date. So more honest conversations, more love, more care. They're a little upset. Violet seems to be the romantic of the bunch of her kids, who's like, oh, it's kind of romantic, like they don't want to live without each other. Jane is the oldest. She's the realist, and apparently she must have been like the hardest of the children. She got pregnant young, had a child young. Like her daughter is like 30s, like grown up, and she's like, Mom, no, you're not doing this. They must have not gotten along for apart, teen years being what they are. She had said like she experimented with drugs, and she was a little bit of a wild child teenager, but she's an anchor woman. She's very successful. All 3 of their children seem to be successful in their own ways. Thomas does something in business. We don't know what Violet does, but Violet lives right next door to her parents. So she's super close to them and like loves them so much. And the 3 of them seem to have very different dynamics with their parents, which is interesting. Jane is very upset by them because she feels they've loved each other so much that they've been each other's world, and the kids were just kind of put to the side a little. Not that they were bad parents. That's not the vibe I'm getting. Just like there's an anger or a little bit of a resentment there for how much they've loved each other versus like you're the backstory, which is kind of upsetting, and I could understand that. But the story is amazing. We're also getting flashbacks. We're getting flashbacks to 1941 with the love story starting between Evelyn and Joseph. Evelyn and Joseph have known each other their entire lives. They grew up literally next door to each other, and they were always friends. Evelyn has a brother named Tommy, which I'm getting a vibe here because their son's name is Thomas. She had a brother named Tommy who they were all extremely, extremely close. I feel like something might have happened to Tommy. And considering it's the 1941, I feel like the war is going to play in and he's going to have gone to war because he's older than Evelyn. This is my assumption though. Not sure. We will see. I have bad vibes. But back to that. So it goes back to the 1941 when they started to have their romance. When she ended up going to Boston, she got sent away by her mom because she was too much of a boy, too much into sports, too much wanting to run around, and they brought her to like a proper girls' school to be a wife, all the things she doesn't fucking want to do at all, and be a society girl. No, I keep doing this. But she more or less doesn't want to do that from the jump. But when she comes back, she's obviously more put together. She's beautiful. And the whole time she was away for the whole year, he has been thinking about her, Joseph. But he doesn't want to say anything to his best friend Tommy because like that's his sister and that could be weird. They end up getting together when they come back, and Tommy is a little pissed off because he knows what's going on, but nobody's talked to him yet. And when they finally tell him, he's like, why didn't you tell me? Like, do you think I would have forbid it? Like, you're my best friend. You're an amazing guy. This is my sister. I love my sister. He's also extremely close to his sister. They're like this. They're like 2 or 3 years apart, but they're very close. 2 years? I think they're 2 years apart. Because when the book starts, yeah, that's what I think is going to happen because she's 16, which means he's 18. The wars are coming. I think he gets drafted. Oh, I hope he doesn't die in the war, but that's the assumption that I'm making. But then again, sometimes people just name their kids after somebody who's alive that they just like genuinely love. My middle name is Catherine. I'm named after my aunt and my godmother. She is alive. She's actually outside. So, I mean, maybe everything's fine. I don't know, but I'm getting vibes. And then it also comes back to now, 2000. Oh, also, my brain's everywhere. This book doesn't take place now as in 2024. It takes place in 2001. So 2001 and 1941, that's the switches in time as of now. And Evelyn apparently at one point in her life wanted to be a pianist. That was a dream that she had, and she was very skilled and very talented. Even her mother, who was not the biggest fan of her daughter, her only daughter, was very impressed with her skill. And now that she's got the Parkinson's and her hands are shaking, which is very sad, she wants her daughter Jane and her to have a moment together, because Jane, she taught all three of her children to play the piano, but Jane's the only one that really took it and was extremely skilled like her mother in that way. And she tells Jane, like, look, I want to play piano with you. I want to go to the big concert hall in Boston, which is what my dream was at one point, and play. And you have connections because you are an anchor and you know a guy, so could we do that together? And Jane is like, I don't want to do it with you. Like, she's so mad at her mom for leaving, for wanting to leave. And they are all a little selfish in the sense, and understanding selfishness, granted, but selfish in the sense, like, you haven't tried enough, you haven't this enough. And her mom's like, I've been to specialists, I've seen everything, you don't want to admit what is, and I don't have the time to fight with you. And it's kind of like, you only have a year. Oh, also, Evelyn does not want Joseph to die at all. She's very much against the whole situation. She's like, convince your father. Convince him to live. I don't want him to go. She feels so responsible for everything because this is what's happening to her. And she can't help what's happening to her. And it's the deterioration of her life. And see? I'm like getting all teary-eyed already. I told you this was going to happen. I feel so sad for her. I don't know anybody personally that has dealt with Parkinson's disease. I know it's a horrible disease. Like, they even actually talk about Michael J. Fox, who's one of the most well-known people to have it, and had it very young as well. But I do, unfortunately, know Alzheimer's runs in my family, so there have been members of my family that have dealt with that. So it is extremely sad. So to know what your future is ahead of time, and to know the road you're going to go down, that's upsetting. And I understand why you might not want to do that. And her son is like, you're being selfish. It's not selfish. It's selfless in a lot of ways, because they're also older people. They're in their 80s. And they love each other, and they just want to stay together, and they don't want to have life without one another. And it's very moving, and it's making me want to cry. But that is where we're at right now. We're going back and forth from now to 1941. The war is going to happen. I feel it. And I don't know. No, I know actually Joseph goes to war, because it's talked about at one point, like, so many things have separated us already in our life, even though we've been together for so many years. The war separated us. Boston, because that's where she was, separated us. So he obviously went. I mean, he's a healthy man, so I can't see him not being drafted to go. Drafted or enlisted, like, I don't know what the situation's going to be, but there's a big ass draft. So my vibe is, I feel like Tommy's going to die the brother. I feel like he's going to go to the war and he's not going to survive. And it's going to be a devastating toll on them, but they also love each other, and they were a threesome, like a group together, so it's going to be very much, obviously we know, because we've seen that they're going to get closer together at some point, but this might tear them apart for a while. Also, it's hinted that something happened years ago. Jane, as the oldest child, hinted that, like, things have been good for so long, and things have always been good between my parents, but there was a time when it wasn't. So I'm wondering if maybe there was a cheating at some point, which would be shocking because they seem so, but you never know. You know, relationships change and evolve and go through hard times, so maybe they had a really hard time. But I don't know. But I'm going to see, and I'll check it out, and I'll be back at 50% to let you know what I found out. Hi guys, I am back to talk about The Day I Loved You Most. I am officially at the 50% mark. It is so good. I'm literally loving it. I am sorry if I seem even more low energy. I took my happy little ass to urgent care and found out I don't have a cold. I have a viral infection and an ear infection and every other thing that can go wrong, apparently. I have a really bad immune system, and this is just the day, you know? So I'm summoning up all the energy I have to do this update, and then I am taking a Gatorade and my water and going into that bed with my antibiotics and staying there for like 2 days. So, what can I tell you about the book so far? Oh, this is like a health update with Megan the last, like, what, 2 weeks or something. Soon I'll get past it and it'll just be books again, I promise. But about this book, it's good. It's so sad. It's so emotional. It's so romantic. Like, I'm genuinely loving it. I'm loving every moment of it. I've cried. I said when I did like my little pre-thing about like, oh, I'm probably gonna cry like twice, 4 times. I've cried 5 times already and I'm halfway. I'm scared for me, okay? I'm literally scared. The writing is amazing. The characters are great. I love the conversations that are being had. But let's get to where we were, okay? What has happened since I last checked in? Sadly, literally, as I like stopped this, got back to the book, like half a chapter later, what I thought was going to happen happened. Joseph and Tommy went to the war. They enlisted, and they were 19. They enlisted, and they didn't tell Evelyn they were going to enlist. They just decided to do it because the way that they thought was that they were probably going to get drafted anyway, and they wanted to be, men and enlist and do and do what they believed was the right thing. And Joseph didn't feel as convicted in that as Tommy, but Joseph, Tommy's his best friend. And he said, I couldn't let him go alone. Like, somebody has to be there to protect him. Somebody has to be there to watch out for him. At least if, God forbid, something happens to him, I can say I was there. And I didn't leave him to his own devices, which is a noble thing. It's a good friend thing. So they end up going to war. We do know one thing in a flash forward scene, that Joseph has a limp, a very noticeable limp, but I just assume that could be age related. That could be anything. Come to find out that is not age related. He got shrapnel in his leg and he was severely injured in war. He was there for a while, and he said when he came back, the things he had seen and the destruction and the death and the loss and the pain, it was kind of like he was trying to compartmentalize everything to live and to go into the now. He also, every time he wrote home to Evelyn, who they have obviously been in a long distance relationship during this, he only told her the best of things. He didn't want her to worry. He also didn't want her to worry because her brother's there too. So it's like, if you're not worried about me, you're worried about him. And that's just a bad situation. He ended up coming home, but Evelyn's family, because they live right next door, Evelyn got a letter as well that her brother was coming home, that they were both injured. So she was expecting both of them to show up on the door, and only Joseph did. And she was like, where is he? What do you mean? What? He was injured, and they thought he was going to be okay, but like I thought, Tommy ended up dying. He got shot in the stomach. They thought that they had stopped the bleeding, and they marked him as injured and that he was going to go home, and he died from complications to being shot. And he was 20 years old. Just a sin, an absolute sin that happens now. It happens all the time, which is so sad. But she was devastated. She loved her brother. She kind of didn't mean to blame Joseph, but she blamed him. She just needed to blame somebody. She was upset, she was angry, she was sad, she was confused. She had lost her brother, who she was extremely close with, and she basically was like, I have to leave. I have to leave this small town. Everywhere I look is what was, and it's too hard for me, and it's too painful for me, and I stayed here for you guys. I made flags, and I did all these things to help, the war effort, but I can't do it anymore. I can't be a part of it. And poor Joseph was going through it himself. I mean, he had just come home. He had shrapnel in his leg. He walks with a considerable limp at the beginning, and we know years on he still has a limp. Maybe not as bad with therapy, but who knows. And his best friend died. He's absolutely beside it. He's blaming himself for the fact that he came back. He has survivor's guilt. He's also thinking, I should have been there. Maybe there was something I could have done, even though he couldn't have. He's losing the love of his life. And he comes to find out when he's home, his parents didn't want to worry him while he was overseas and stress him out. His mother has cancer. And I'm like, this poor guy, give him a drink or something. Somebody hug him. Like, I just felt so bad for him as a character. I was like, he's going through it. Evelyn leaves, and he's like, I love you, please don't leave me. Like, I want to be with you. I'll do anything. He stays in the town for a little while, which is the town he always wanted to live in. He never wanted to move, and he finds her in Boston, and he's like, I will move here. I will give up everything. I love you. I'll be your friend. I'll do anything you want as long as I can be in your life in some way. They end up being friendly again and falling back in love with each other. Basically, they were always in love with each other, but there's this pain, lots of pain associated with each other. And he ends up moving to Boston, and she was like, okay, I don't ever want to go back to that town. It's just too triggering for me. Not only that, but she doesn't get along very well with her parents. Her brother was the golden boy to the mom, and she basically doesn't exist. She never did. And her father is a workaholic who was never around to begin with. So there's that. They end up falling back in love. They end up getting married. They live in Boston for a while, and they end up moving back because his family dies, his mom from being sick, his father, and the place that they lived in used to be years ago an inn. And he was like, we're living in this small apartment, we don't have anything, I want to move back to where we're from. You know, before all this happened, you loved where we lived. So they move back. She's terrified to have children. She wants to, but she's scared. She's scared of losing something. She's scared of caring and loving something enough that it can hurt her again. And that was painful to read, because if you've gone through any kind of loss, you know what that feels like to lose and how much it devastates you as a person. And, you know, when you have a kid, things change. Things change so much. And you see, I like that this book, honestly, isn't only the good. It's the bad. It's the ugly. It's the nitty gritty of what life is. Like, there's moments where Evelyn's talking about being a mom, and at the time when she's reiterating the story, she has Jane and she has Thomas. Violet's not born yet. And she's like, this is hard. This is crazy hard. Who does this? My whole life is taking care of somebody else. Who was I before? Where's the Evelyn I used to be? You know, I feel like I'm not that person anymore. I don't have dreams anymore. I don't matter as much anymore. And I want to run away. I just want to run away from all of it. Not because I don't love my kids, but because I don't know who I am. And that was a real moment. And as a reader, I enjoyed that. And as a mother, I enjoyed that. Because the truth of the matter is, when you have children, if you are a mom, you know, you give up so many things about your life. And that's okay, because you know you're going to give them up. But you can know, and then you're living in it, and it's totally different. It always is different. And it's the balance, and it's the struggle. And as they get older, it gets easier. But especially at the beginning, it's really hard. My child is 3 years old. It's nowhere near as crazy hard as it was when he was tiny, but it's still hard, and it's going to continue to be difficult. I love my life, and she loves her life. It's just, as a parent, giving up parts of yourself for these little crazy babies. It's hard. And I like that it had that moment of her talking about how difficult it is, because sometimes I feel like when people talk about being a parent, it's all the gloss, it's all the glam, it's all the good, and there's so much good. But let's be realistic, ladies and gents, it's not always sunshine and flowers. And if we tell people it's always sunshine and flowers, and then they end up realizing it's not, that don't help nobody. It doesn't help anybody, because then they feel alone, that nobody feels this way because nobody's talking about it. And I think that Evelyn might have a little postpartum situation, but this was the early 1950s when she has her children, so I don't know. I know for a fact that was not talked about or, you know, brought up, and I think that's what's going on with her also emotionally, which, I mean, give her a break on that. I agree. Postpartum sucks. But also, we're dealing with what's going on now in 2001. I was a mess during this entire reading experience, because the kids in the now in 2001 are struggling with the decision that they have made to end their life. And none is struggling as much as the middle child, Thomas. Thomas is a very interesting character. He is not he's not very outspoken. He's not one that's very big on his emotions. He's very subdued. And apparently he's always been that way. That's just how he is. But he loves his mother. He's very close to his mom, and he's also the only boy. But he's struggling with this, and he's struggling with this to the point that he's barely seen them in like 2 months. He just can't understand why this is happening, and he can't understand why his two sisters are not liking the idea, but are signed up for this is just what it is, when we should all be fighting against it. Thomas has the mentality of you do and you do and you do until you can't do anymore. That's what happens. And you come to find out him and his wife, they had tried to have children for years. It didn't work, but they tried everything. That you can live with yourself once you've done everything. And he just doesn't believe that his mother has tried enough, or enough was good enough for him enough. You know what I mean? But this shit gets so emotional, because when I picked up this book, it had said it was going to talk about Pearl Harbor. I knew that. It said it was going to talk about 9/11. I knew that. But I thought that we were talking about it in like a past tense situation. I did not realize this book was going to take place in 2001. I did not realize Thomas was going to be someone who worked in the city and worked in one of the buildings. And I slowly realized that before what happened ended up happening, and my fear and my panic started to grow and grow. And then he ended up not going to work one day because he suffers from severe migraines. His wife, who he loves very much, made him an appointment, and the appointment was with a specialist that's not in Manhattan. So he was driving to Long Island, and he was listening to the radio, one of his favorite things to do, and he heard on the radio that a plane had crashed, and it was devastating, and he was confused and tried to get on the cell phone and talk and figure out what was going on and call people, and he couldn't reach anybody, and he was panicked, and he was supposed to be there that day, but he canceled his meeting to go here, so he would have been in the towers. But things about 9/11 are extremely upsetting for most people, for everybody. It was a horrible, horrible thing that had happened. I am a New Yorker. I live in Manhattan. I have lived in Manhattan my entire life, and when 9/11 happened, I was younger. I remember it very well, and my father was supposed to be there that day. He was not, but he was supposed to be there, and actually his thing got canceled, and that's why he wasn't there that day to deliver papers that he had to deliver. So reading Thomas having such a near miss was emotional, and seeing the whole family grip with what had happened, this loss, this horrible thing that happened to so many people. It was upsetting to hear, because it's upsetting. It's just horrible situation, horrible for those poor families and the people that were lost that day. It's also very triggering for a New Yorker who was here for it and saw it and lived it and knew people that were affected badly in that. I have people I knew that didn't make it, their family members and stuff. So it was a triggering read, and as you can see, my eyes are getting all kind of teary-eyed, and we're not going to do that here. Nope, we're not, or we're going to try. But he then, this situation happening gave him the epiphany of like life, and he couldn't get a hold of his wife at the time because cell phones weren't working, and that was a real thing. They did not fucking work. You couldn't get a hold of anybody, even landlines, like everything was down. And he finally got a hold of her, and he realized, like, I just went like 5 hours, 3 hours thinking what happened to my wife, the panic. And he realized, maybe I understand my dad a little bit more for not wanting to leave her. And he's known her, my mom, since they were born, more or less. I've known my wife 10 years, and I can't imagine the 5 minutes of being without her and thinking something had happened to her made me feel lost and devastated. So he runs his parents, and he basically is like, I love you guys, and I'm sorry. Like, and that's what you do too. Like, when you have seen loss, you realize how fleeting life is and time is. You really realize it. But one of the things that's also being realized is as Thomas is coming to the epiphany of, like, I have this time, I want to work on it. Evelyn is having a different epiphany of, I feel horrible about myself now. Now I feel selfish for making this decision. There are so many people that went to work one day and their whole life was taken from them, and here I am. Granted, I'm getting sicker and not being of all my faculties, but I'm just throwing it away. And Joseph is trying to be like, it's different for you. You know what? It's not that you're not thinking, and you can always change your mind. We don't have to do this. They also find out that their oldest grandchild, who is 27, is having a baby, and the baby's going to be born right before they make their decision. It's such a good book, and it is so gripping and emotional and taxing and beautiful and funny. I mean, I wish I was talking about the funny probably more, but it's these moments between a family, you know, of coming to terms with your life, who you are, who you were, what you wish you could do differently, what you had the time to fix. It's a really amazing book, and it's an amazing story, and I have cried multiple times already, and I still have half a book to get through. I'm scared, guys. I'm so scared for the end. But I have been talking, I'm looking at my little clock timer, for over 15 minutes. And as I said, I am sick. So I'm going to take a big thing of water that's right over there, lay in that bed. I'm either going to finish the book today or tomorrow. We'll see how I feel. But either way, I'm really loving it. It's really, really, really good. And I will see you guys in a little bit, and we'll see if I feel any better. My feeling is going to be no. Bye. Hi guys, I am back to talk about the ending of The Days I Loved You Most. It was so emotional and so good. I really loved it. I loved the writing. I loved all the charm. I loved seeing Evelyn and Joseph and their family, and the flashbacks and the flash forwards to now. It was a really, really moving book. I'm going to talk about the ending, but I'm probably not going to talk for very long because I don't know if you can tell, but my sickness is a lot worse. It's actually 2 days after the last time I updated you, and this is the first time I've had any energy to even sit up and talk. So we're going to do this pretty fast. So sorry guys, it's not going to be a super in-depth ending here, but we did find out some more stuff about Evelyn and Joseph and their past and the relationship that they had with their kids. One thing that we did find out from a flashback is that there was a young man named Sam who worked at the inn at one point, and it was suspected, Joseph thought that maybe Evelyn had an affair with him during the summer. She never did. But she did kind of flirt with him just because she was flattered that this much younger, worldly, educated man found her fascinating, which can happen at times, I suppose. So I don't think that was something so crazy. But Jane, her oldest, was 18 at the time and saw them flirting, what she perceived to be flirting, and she had a thing for Sam, and Sam did not want her, so she felt upset and angry and despondent and ended up taking it all out on her mom and not wanting a relationship with her, which I feel like was very dramatic, in all honesty, for something that you suspect but you never actually knew and or saw. But you're 18, and at 18, you know, nobody's thinking correctly, and at 18 you're just, let's be honest, at 18 you're not the biggest fans of your fucking parents. That's the God's honest truth. And it probably felt to her like, this is a reason to not like you. Here's a physical reason that I can latch my brain onto, versus all the unrealistic reasons we don't like our parents when we're really young. But she ended up at 18 taking a gap year and moving to California. And we knew from some of the chapters previously that Jane had some struggles in her life, but we didn't realize just how much of the struggles, and that was really sad. She ends up being addicted to heroin at one point in her life and living in a really grungy, worn down place. Actually, Joseph ends up tracking her down years later, finding her and being like, begging her to come home. And she looks so thin and disheveled, and she's next to a man that's barely dressed, and he is begging his daughter, and it broke my heart. It was so realistic to what addiction looks like and how it can affect anybody, regardless of where you come from, regardless of your family. It can happen to anybody. And it happened to Jane, who was this bright light, very smart, educated girl that just went down a rabbit hole. And it's talked about even later on that Jane has never been in love since she was very young, and the reason why she's terrified of love is the one time she fell in love was with this guy, and she ended up going down this road of addiction and all these things. So when she thinks of love, she thinks of losing herself completely. She doesn't have good feelings on that, which I think is an interesting conversation to have about like how everybody feels love is different and why. And for her, that's why she's like very afraid of love. But she does end up 3 years later coming home, and she has a daughter with her daughter Rain, who is like 14 months old, and she tells her mom, I'm so sorry, like I get it now. I've made some bad decisions, but I want to work on myself. I want to fix things. And she does. She never does drugs again. She becomes a news anchor. She's really driven and hardworking. And we do find out at one point too that now her daughter Rain, who is 27, is having a baby, which is great news. She has been wanting to have a baby for a while now, her and her husband, and they finally are having the baby. And the baby is going to be born in May, but their day of ending everything, Evelyn and Joseph's day of ending everything, is in June. So there's a little emotional situations about that. Evelyn is really struggling with leaving. She's struggling because she loves her family, and now they're all coming so much closer together through this year, saying things they never said. Obviously, like I mentioned before, Thomas, the son, with 9/11, now he's become so much more honest in his emotions, and such a well-rounded person, and more outgoing and more involved in family things now that he knows how quick things can end from what he has seen, which I feel like everybody had a really good evolution in this. Violet, her marriage is in trouble, and it's kind of funny because Violet looks at her parents and she's like, you guys are perfect, like my marriage isn't perfect. And Evelyn tells her, we were never perfect, we just hid that shit from you guys. You didn't see the times we argued and we fought, you didn't see those moments, or maybe they were so few and far between you just don't remember them, but we weren't perfect. You know, we loved each other every day, but we had to fight for this relationship. And when you are in a marriage or you are in a relationship, there are going to be good times and bad times. And you can't run when there's bad times because you're going to miss all the good that you could have had. And the most important thing in a relationship is if you don't love the person, then leave. But if you're just scared, if you're just having a rough patch, that's not the same thing. Which I thought was a really good conversation between mother and daughter, and a really honest conversation of what a relationship takes. And Violet is the dreamer. She's the one that looks at everything and likes like the Cinderella fairy tale, and that's what she's assumed her parents always had. And now as an adult, she's coming to the reality of, wait, they're not perfect, which is a hard thing for her to come to grasp with as well. And that her marriage, you have to work on that. And, you know, there are times you kind of, you know, become ships in the night and forget because you have children. She has 4 children, 3 of which are grown and 1 that is still at home. But, you know, you just become tangled up in the everyday. And sometimes you forget to look up and go, oh my God, there's my partner, which happens to everybody. But you have to work on that connection and work on that relationship. And they end up working on it, which is good. We have some sad stuff happen. Evelyn's progression is getting worse. Her hands are shaking miserably. She is starting to forget things. She actually fell at one point with Parkinson's. You do usually actually fall and hurt yourself, but she's caught herself every time, and if not her, then Joseph caught her. But this one time she falls, she wets herself, which is like very sad for her. She scrapes up her elbows and legs, and she realizes like, oh no, this is getting worse, like I can't even catch myself anymore, which is very sad. Evelyn doesn't want Joseph to die with her. She wants him to keep going, and she more or less figures out she's going to figure out some kind of way to make him stay, but she doesn't know how. And then it's very sad. I knew it was coming, but yet it was still very sad because each chapter is like, it says the month, so you know you're getting closer and closer to the deadline, the year deadline that they had set for themselves, and it was May. At the beginning of May, and their deadline is June, and they're looking at the flowers and they're talking about how much they love each other, and it was a really good day. Like, she was great, Memory was great, they had fun, they were laughing, and she ended up falling, and it wasn't from the fall. They ended up finding out she had a stroke, and it's one of those things where life just kicks you in the fucking teeth, because she had done this whole year of thinking what's going to get me is this disease, and what ended up getting her was a stroke. And Joseph was beside himself and devastated, and she actually ended up like 2 days later passing away from the stroke. So that's what they were supposed to do, it together with pills and be together, and that didn't end up happening the way that she wanted. Also, we find out right before that Evelyn gave him a present, Joseph, and he didn't look at it yet, but the present is a box of every single letter that she's written him since 1941 when he went away at war. She said, I started writing when you were at war and I just never stopped. She said, whenever there was something I wanted to tell you, or a memory or a moment, she said, and I didn't know how to say it, I would write it down knowing one day I'd give you these box of letters. She said, but I'm giving it to you now. And I think one of the reasons she did that too was like, you don't need to leave, you can have this part of me, and stay with everybody else. So he's like a zombie going through life. He is so depressed. He misses her. He hasn't eaten in 3 days. He doesn't understand how this happened when they had a plan. And he's like, you know, life doesn't care about your plans. And he's like, I should have known better, that life never cares. You know, it is what it is. And it's just really, it's sad, but it's also, it's sad and yet heartwarming at the same time, because she didn't get to suffer. And that was one thing she really didn't want to do, was to suffer. So it was quick. And then she was gone. And I feel like if you're gonna go, that's the way, as fast as you can, you know what I mean? So but it was a month earlier than what was intended. He stays around. He sees Jane have a baby, and she has a little girl, and they name her Eve after Evelyn. And the date is slowly approaching of him having to do it, like the date that they had set. And at the very, very last minute, he's like, nope, I'm not doing it. He throws the pills out. He's like, I just want to live. I want to see my wife's face in my great grandchild. I want to see her grow up as much as I can. You know, there's all this time, and I don't want to waste it. I don't want it to go away. And right before he made his decision, there were letters that they had both written out to their children. So he went to get the letters, and when he went to get the letters, before he did it, he saw there was a letter addressed to him, and he didn't know that. And the letter said, please don't do this. Don't end your life. I love you so much, and I'll wait for you. I will always wait for you. And now, you know, you can have all these stories. When you come up here, I want you to have a lot to tell me. Tell me about everybody, okay? So please, don't leave me. Don't leave everybody yet. We'll have our time together. I'll keep heaven waiting for you, okay? Don't worry about it. And he realized, like, okay. Which was, that was emotional to see too, because when you love your partner and you love somebody, you don't want them to go. And even if, okay, hey, it's with me, that's great. But we have a family, we have kids, we have grandkids, we have people that are gonna miss me because I have to go, and now miss you too. That's just, it just seems unnecessary to put people in more pain than they have to be in. So that's how the book actually ends. And I thought it was good. Like, it's a summer day. His family's all outside. He's going to go back outside and be with them for however long he has left. And I really enjoyed that ending. I thought it was obviously bittersweet, don't get me wrong, but very good. The writing was fantastic. The switches in time, amazing. You felt so connected to this family every step of the way. It was great. And I'm going to say what I rated this book, because my energy is depleting super fast, 12 minutes in. I am going to give this, I don't think this should be a surprise because of how fantastic it is. I can't find one thing wrong with it. I am giving it a 5-star, which is insane, because that means this is my third 5-star review in this video, which is crazy. The next book I'm reading, I'm pretty sure will not be a 5-star review, because I've heard some things, but I'm so happy that I've had 3 5-stars back to back. I mean, I haven't been feeling very well, that's for sure, but at least I've been reading really good things to get me through. So I will see you guys in a little bit talking about the next book I plan to read. I'll see you guys then. Hi guys, it's Megan Reads, and I am back to talk about the next book I'm going to be reading, which is Murder Road. I'm a little nervous about this book. I'm not even going to lie to you. I am a big Simone St. James fan, but I have heard that this book, it's not very good. I've heard some pretty bad reviews on on BookTube and Bookstagram, but I'm not going to judge, okay? Maybe I will absolutely love it. Maybe it will have some like creepy 80s indie horror kind of vibe or something, and I'll fall in love with it. You never know. So I am excited to read it. Again, I said previously, just in case you just tuned in now, sorry for the low energy that I am having in the tail end of this video here. I have a viral infection, and I have 102 fever, and I'm very, very, very sick. But I am trying to get things done as much as I can, because what else is there to do right now? So reading is what I'm at. My son is not with me because I'm so sick. My aunt is taking care of him for the next couple days, so I'm just trying to get some stuff done. So here we are, updated completely. Murder Road. I'm excited to read it. I'm kind of excited to read it. I'm a little nervous just because of all the reviews that I have heard, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. Some stuff already in the synopsis to me doesn't make perfect sense, but I'll let it be. What do we know so far? There's a woman named April and there's a man named Eddie. They are on their honeymoon. They're going to the resort where their honeymoon is going to be. It's the middle of the night. They're driving on a desolate road. It also takes place in 1995, ladies and gentlemen. So I was 5 years old when this book takes place. That's some shit. I love when books take place in the 80s and the 90s, so that part's interesting enough. And they're in the car and they end up picking up a woman on the side of the road, and they let her in. She's a hitchhiker, but she has blood all over her. They don't realize that because it's night until she gets in the car. They end up driving her to the hospital, and there's somebody following them the whole way there. She ends up dying in the hospital, and they are considered suspects, which I understand, but then I don't understand, because in the synopsis it says there have been murders happening on this highway for years and years, and they're the suspects just because they picked somebody up. It's like, if this has been happening for like 10-15 years, how could it be us? But I guess small town police, who knows, and just wanting to solve the case. I don't know, but I do love thrillers. I love a horror book, so maybe this will be good. You don't know if you don't try. So I'm gonna give it the old college try, see what I think about it, and I will check in with you guys at the 10% mark. Hi guys, it's Megan Reads, and I am back to talk about Murder Road. I am officially a little over 10% into the book, and number one update before I continue, I am still sick, but I'm starting to feel like so much better, which is why I'm filming today. So decided, let's get some reading done while I can. But about the book, I'm not loving it. I'm not loving it so far. It's actually kind of annoying me, honestly, because some of the stuff that's happening, I'm like, it doesn't make fucking sense. It's just really off the beaten path of stupid. But it could turn around. It could be one of those things where it's a slow build and then it'll go somewhere. I'm not that far in. I'm only 6 chapters in. So there's like 45 or 48 chapters or something. So I have quite a lot of book left. So it could get better. But let's talk about what we know so far. Okay, so far we know that there is a girl named April and her husband Eddie. They are recently married, and by recent I mean like 24 hours ago. They're going on their honeymoon to this like lodge situation, and they're going to be there for 5 days. They're driving, it's the middle of the night, they're so excited to be together. Eddie is a veteran. He was in the Iraq War. This book takes place once again in 1995. April works at a bowling alley. He works now at, like, on cars, like a mechanic kind of situation. They ended up meeting through roommates. April is an interesting character though, because she has something about her backstory growing up. Like, her name is April, but I don't think that's her real name. I think that's the name that she goes by now. She knows how to be quiet. She knows how to blend into the background. She's somebody that's pretty, but not too pretty. She always works off the book jobs. If somebody traced her, they wouldn't find anything out. Like, this is information we find out really fast. So we know April has some kind of a past, and it's associated with her mom. Don't know what it is though, but that's one of the little tidbits that we know so far about April. Eddie, we don't know shit really. We just know he was obviously in the Iraq War. He was recently discharged, and sometimes he was taking medication at some point because sometimes he sees things, which, like PTSD. So that's what I'm assuming there. But what ends up happening is they're on the road. It's late at night, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and when they're driving, they get lost. They get lost to where they're going. They're looking at a map because it's like a map, you know, not like no GPS like we have now. And they're trying to figure it out, and they realize they see somebody on the side of the road. And at first they think it's a man, and then when they get closer they realize no, it's a woman, but she's wearing like a very big coat and it's wrapped around her. And April and Eddie say, let's stop and see if she's okay. And when the woman kept looking at them, she wasn't really talking. she wasn't saying much of anything. But once she saw April, she was a little bit more forthcoming. I guess, you know, obviously you see a guy in a car, you're more like this. But if there's a woman with him being like, hi, you know, you feel safer, which most people would. So I get that. She is a little reluctant to even get help or get in the car, and they're kind of weirded out by that because they're like, you're on the side of the road, like you must want help, right? Like, what's going on here? And finally she looks at April and she gets in the car and she like makes up her mind, and she says she wants to go to this town. And she's like, okay, what's in the town? And she says, the hospital. And April looks at her and realizes, like, behind, she's shaking, and under that big coat she is bleeding all over the place. And April doesn't freak out. April, it's kind of said even in that moment that April has seen something similar to this before or dealt with this before. So she's very calm and is like talking to her like, baby, it's going to be okay. And she's like, I don't know where that came from out of my mouth. But, which makes me feel like maybe something happened with her mom and she's like being triggered back to there. That's my assumption. Don't know yet. Obviously, we're very early days in the book. But the girl's bleeding. She says, what's your name? What's your name? Like, tell me something about you. Her name is Rumagine. I'm listening to it on the audio, so it might be Runagine. I can't fully hear it, so I'm going to say Rumagine. And she's just like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for all of this. And then the light, there's a truck that starts coming. And the lights, the high beams are on. And she goes, I'm so sorry, he's coming for me. And it's like, the fuck is, and April's asking, like, who is it? Who is this person? And she can't talk. She doesn't say anything. They end up going to the hospital, dropping her off at the hospital. But obviously, April was holding her, trying to stop the blood. Eddie picked her up and brought her into the hospital. So they have blood covering their clothes. And they're being looked at by the ambulance and everybody like, you're murderers. It's also kind of interesting to me because these people are going into a hospital. The fact that the hospital staff is taken aback by blood is like, you work in the ER. You've never seen blood before. Like, the fact that everybody is like, oh, panicked. I'm like, a little much personally, but okay. But they end up going in for questioning, which I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, you have to ask questions at the very least, but people aren't asking them questions. There's a Detective Beam and Detective Quinton, and they're not asking questions. They legitimately think it's them, that they have killed this person. And before they had come in, those two detectives, there was like a local detective who had come in and basically was asking Eddie all these questions like, have you come here before? How many times have you come to this town? Why are you coming to this town? All this shit. And Eddie's like, I've never been here before. Like, you can prove, like, I've never been here before. We were coming for our honeymoon. We got lost. Very simple situation, but nobody believes him, which is like, okay. It's really odd. And then the main detectives come in, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and these are like the big rig detectives. So Eddie immediately realizes, as somebody who's had lots of training in situations, like, this is a bigger case than what it is. This isn't just one person. And the fact that one of the questions the other dopey cop had asked was like, have you ever picked up hitchhikers before? And he was like, that's such a random question to like ask somebody. He's like, and it makes me think that this has happened before here. And he asks the detectives, and the detectives are being assholes. Like, who are you to ask me a question? It's like, I'm the person you're asking. Like, and the detective Quinton genuinely thinks that they're involved, that they just found this person and killed her and brought her to the emergency room. I have so many questions about the logistics and how this even makes any kind of sense at all. But they end up saying, like, you guys can't leave town. We want to process your car. Where'd you throw out the knife? Because you killed, like, all this stuff. And I'm just like, it seems a little ridiculous personally, but okay, fine. They send them to a bed and breakfast. They go to the bed and breakfast. The next day, they're like, we're going to pick you guys up early for questioning. They pick them up early. And Eddie asks a question that I was like, yeah, please make sense to me of this. He asked Detective Quinton, he's like, I don't understand something. Did you check our reservations? That we made a reservation? Yes, we checked. But I never heard of this place before, so I didn't believe you. But yeah, I checked it. He goes, so you know we're not from here. You've checked that we had a reservation somewhere else. And you somehow believe that we got lost and stumbled upon a hitchhiker, killed her, and then brought her to the emergency room to be caught? What? Like, it doesn't even make sense. At least some character is saying, like, this is stupid. And when he's asking, like, has this happened to anybody else before? And he's like, why are you asking that? It's like, because I have questions, dude. You're fucking... And they did a whole background check on Eddie and found out, like, a bunch of stuff that, like, was known stuff, no secrets. And April, they're like, oh, all we found out was your name and your address. Like, you keep very quiet, don't you? And it's like, it's just too much small town vibe. Like small, they're making the cops sound like such dopes. And I'm a big Simone St. James fan. I really love her writing, and I'm just not drawn into this at all as of yet. They also agree, Eddie and April, to not mention that there was a car chasing them because Eddie is afraid that nobody will believe them and they'll believe it's his PTSD. I don't know. I don't know. I'm like, I would probably tell them about the car. Like, I don't... and April even says that, like, well, shouldn't we tell them about the car? Because then they'll know, like, there was somebody else on the road that night. Like, Eddie had a point, though, too. Like, we didn't get a license plate. We can't identify who it is. And now they're at the scene of the crime, walking them through, picking her up. And the cops are also back at the hotel searching their, like, clothes and searching things to see, like... I don't get it, though. Because, look, I understand, like, horror. I understand horror, like, tropes and stuff. I do. I love horror. I just don't get the idiocy of why would you just automatically assume these people killed this girl? For what reason? Not only for what reason, but knowing, it's not been said yet, but it's been hinted and sprinkled all over the story that this has happened many times before. So are you thinking that these people who are 27 and 28 or 26 and 27, that they've just been coming to this small little nowhere town for years and killing people? Like, I don't get it. Like, it's just a little, not really getting it so far. I'm not having a vibe. I'm more than anything, I'm annoyed. I'm just annoyed. But I mean, so far, April seems cool. Like, I like her as a character. I don't dislike her as a character. Detective Quentin seems like the biggest, like, when you think of asshole cop, like, that's just what I'm getting vibe-wise, which I'm like, okay, how stereotypical. Eddie seems fine. Do I have any assumptions of where this is gonna go? I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know. Because I'm like, it could go to some places. Maybe they get arrested. But if they get arrested, I'm going to get annoyed. I'm going to get really annoyed. Because it's like, there's no proof that they did this. Like, I get that you want to, like, solve a case. But you need evidence. It's 1995. It's not, you know, 1904. Where you could be like, I just said they did it. And lock them up. You know, there's evidence, dude. Come on. So I'm like, but maybe that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping for, like, we have this build up right now, right? We have this whole, like, they believe that they did it. They have to cross every T, dot every I. I get it, all that. And then maybe within the next couple of chapters, it's like, hey, we know it wasn't you. And they take it upon themselves to figure out what they have gotten themselves in trouble in. But it's also like, I would have just left if I could leave. Like, I don't know this person. I'm not connected to her in any way. But maybe they end up having to figure it out, because I'm going to assume if they're going to try to, quote unquote, like, put it on anybody, they're going to try to put it on Eddie. That is my cat. She's so loud right now behind me. She sees a bird. But maybe they're going to put it on Eddie because he was in, like, the army, and, like, maybe he snapped. Like, they're going to pull something like that out of thin fucking air. I don't know. And, like, then April has to investigate and figure it out because that's her husband, and she doesn't want, like, him to be accused of something he didn't do. And she knows he didn't do it because she was with him the whole time. I don't know where we're going. But I do know my cat is meowing extremely loudly behind me. So, I'm going to continue to read this book and pray that we like it. Right now, it's not going very well. But I expected this. I did. I had heard some shit about this book, so I will check in with you guys at the 50% mark. Maybe it gets better. Please get better. Hi guys, it's Megan Reeds and I am back to talk about Murder Road. I am officially at the 50% mark and I have some news, guys, okay? The news might shock, okay? It might shock. I'm kind of liking it. The way it started out, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna like it. I'm not enjoying this police nonsense. It's just not for me. And then slowly but surely, I actually really like it. I like it. I'm interested. This is far more a mystery than anything, and I love a mystery. Give me a whodunit. Let me try to figure out what's going on, and I'm all in it. I got my little board up trying to figure it all out before the characters do, every time. So this is getting me a little interested. And there's ghosts. That's one thing I really do like about Simone St. James books. A lot of them actually do have like supernatural aspects to it, which are always just so much fucking fun if it's done right. But let's go to what has happened so far. So they were suspects, obviously. You know how I felt about that. I thought stupid. I will say they were suspects for a bit, but not as long as I thought. So that saved it a little bit for me. I thought they were going to be suspects the entire book, and I was going to be like pulling out my hair. Like, come on, there's no way. Also, that detective that I had talked about earlier that was interviewing them first before like the main, state detectives came in, Detective Saeed, he doesn't think they did it either. And he actually at one point, when they go look at the scene of the crime, pulls April aside and says like, I don't think you did this. Like, I don't. And nobody goes on this road. This road is like a very avoidable road because we've had issues here. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, other people must have died here for the state police to be involved in this, and other people had died there. And she was like, who? Like, I want to know who it was, what's going on. And obviously he doesn't fucking tell her. She is walking away, and as she walks away she gets a cold chill down her back, and she looks down and there's a card, and it's like under debris and under everything, and it's a sympathy card for a girl that died there years ago named Catherine O'Connor. So she sees that and she's like, okay, so I know one name of somebody definitely died here named Catherine, and that's not the woman who we just found, Rhoda Jean, that we just brought to the hospital. So this is somebody totally different. So don't like it. But they are accused of it for a while, but come to find out they didn't do it, and which we knew, obviously. But the police figure it too, like, okay, hey, you know what, you guys definitely didn't do this crime. They end up finding a backpack that the girl had, and the backpack that she had was in this guy named Max's truck, who's like a town guy. So now they think it's him, and they've arrested him. But Detective Saeed is like, I've known this guy my whole life. He's 22, 23 years old. He's a good guy. I just find this so crazy that this was going on right in front of me. Like, did he kill all these people that have died here? Like, how could he have? The first person that died here, he would have been like very, very young. So I don't know, something just doesn't sit right with me. But now the detectives, Quentin and Beam, are like, oh, case closed. Like, we figured it out. It's him. He probably killed the Catherine girl years prior and killed her and killed the other people, and that's just it. Even though time frames and math doesn't seem to fully work. But okay. But they end up, April and Eddie, staying at that bed and breakfast I told you about, and the woman there named Rose, we like Rose. Rose is the main bitch. She doesn't give a shit. Her husband used to be like the sheriff of the town, and he died, and nobody likes her in the town, but she's got balls like ironclad, and she does not think that April and Eddie had anything to do with it. The first night she was like, maybe, you never know, like outsiders, but she said something about it just rubbed her the wrong way. So she starts talking to April, and they start exchanging information. She's like, tell me what you saw and dealt with, and I'll tell you about the town. So here we go, we'll be besties, hang it out. And they end up finding out that multiple people have died on that road over the course of like 20 years, and that there's a legend. The legend is of somebody called the Lost Girl. It was apparently the first girl that got killed there in 1976. Her body was found, but her remains, let's put it that way, her remains were not found for a month. So they were never able to identify who she was. She did have all her clothes on her, but no name, no ID, no identification of any kind. And they do not think she was assaulted because she was fully dressed, but they didn't find her for over a month. And she's the only one. She's the first, number one, but she's also the only one that has never been they've never found her body. So they found pieces of her, but not all of her, which means that parts of her remains are probably still in the woods, which is terrifying. And she's never been identified. That's why she's called the Lost Girl. And the legend goes that when somebody is on that road, the Lost Girl will beg for help. Not beg for help. The Lost Girl will end up like getting you and taking you with her and killing you. Is that true? Is that not? We don't really know. Apparently there was like a guy on the road, like that whole hitchhiking thing that had happened before. So is that true? Is that not true? Was Ruma Jean, was she one of the victims, or did Max actually kill her? Like, was she just an exception to the rule of that area? Because she had said something like, watch, he's behind you, like he's coming for me, da, da, da. And the fact that she said that she also knew that the truck was there, and they found the truck, so the truck is a real truck. It's not like a ghost truck or something. So a part of me feels like Ruma Jean was, maybe that was his first kill. But what they do realize, I know this is like a lot, this story has so many different parts of it, but they end up getting told, April and Eddie, like, you didn't do it, you can go, leave, get out of our town, we hate you. And they're leaving, and when they leave, the Lost Girl is coming after them and opening the window and saying, help me, find me, help me. And no one, that's never happened to any of them before. Any person that's been on the road has never seen her, like seen her and heard her speak and her say things and like try to chase the car down. And when they're trying to get away, they're running, they're trying to get the car off. The ghost is almost picking Eddie, who's like this big ass 6'5" guy, like out of the car window, which I'm like, okay, a little crazy, but you know what? Otherworldly strength, baby. We'll go with it, fine. So that happens, and then they end up getting the car turned around and actually ending up back at the town. And they're like, you know what? We need to figure out what happened. We need to figure out her story. She's lost. And Eddie and April, for all their misgivings of the town itself, they are really good people. And Eddie had come from, obviously being in war and like you leave no man behind kind of mentality. And one thing that I do like too is April is very sensitive to what all these people are going through, because everybody that was the hitchhikers that ended up dying, they were young. They were like 18, 19 years old, basically kids. And she relates to them because she came from a very troubled life herself. She did that for years, trying to get around the world and trying just to survive. And she was like, they're kids and nobody's looking for them. Nobody cares. And they're kind of being like thrown away, like no one's investigating what happened to them. And that's not all right to do. Like that could have been me. That could be somebody else, like you never know. Also, we get more backstory on April. We find out that she had a dad that was a piece of shit and used to beat her mom and beat her. And I don't know why my brain is thinking he was wealthy. In my head, it just makes sense because they had to run away at the cover of darkness. Like if they had been found, like it would have been bad. They had to change their names, change IDs, do all this stuff, which makes me think that he was a high power in something that he could have found them. Like she changed her name. We don't even know what her original name was. Eddie does know the true story of what happened to her at 12 years old when she left with her mom. Eddie is under the impression that her mother is dead. Her mother, from what I gather, is not dead. They just separated and went their own ways. There was a situation right now where she went to the bank and she has a hidden bank account that has $7,000 in it, and it's been drained. Somebody took all the money out and it was a joint account, which makes me think that that was her mom, and her mom like stole all the money. I don't know where we're going with that side story. It's interesting. Is it the main story that I'm intrigued by? No. Right now we're investigating who the Lost Girl is. And I thought this was fucking cool too. They go back to the town and they're talking about it, like, what are we going to do? What are we not going to do? How are we going to find out information? And there's this girl that keeps like staring at them, like eyeing them down, and comes over and is like, are you the people that found that girl in your car? And she's like, yeah, like, God, you're annoying. What are you asking all these questions for? And she's like, I know everything about this. I live in this town. I've lived in this town my whole life, and I'm very obsessed with like the murders that have happened here, and I know everything. And if you want to know anything, then you need to work with me. And she's 16 years old, but she's from a very, very wealthy family, her and her sister Grace. And then she was like, come to our house, like we have paperwork, we have information, and maybe it'll help you if you're actually trying to find answers, because these poor kids deserve answers. They're our age. Like this could happen, and you know, one day what is it going to happen to my sister when she's on the highway? It's going to happen to me. Like it could happen to somebody that we know, and people need to be looking for these people. So I was like, I like you, Beatrice. I like you, Grace. I like Beatrice even more because Eddie was like, how do you know all this? How did you find all this stuff? Like, how do you have all this information? She works at the police station, and she was just printing and copying all their information and was like, they didn't notice, so I just took it. I wanted to know more information. I'm like, okay. But one thing that they have, because she has the actual records from the police department, is that when the body was found of the lost girl, 1 month, she was out there for a month, and then her body was found. But then 6 weeks after that, there was a Letterman jacket that was found there, and they're wondering, like, if that jacket has anything to do with anything, if it's from a school. The woman they said by her body, like she was probably in her early 20s. So now they're going all over like the town where the letter jacket is from to see if there was a missing person. Also, they thought something else was interesting, that she's also the only one that in her, like she had a shirt, and in her shirt, like the tag was removed, and they said, you know, maybe they removed the tag because it would have let you know who she was, because she's the only one that had all of that stuff done to her. She's also the first. So it's like, is there a serial killer that is doing this over and over, or is it now her ghost doing it to all these people that are out there? I don't know. The writing is not like fantastic by any means, but it's fun. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. Sorry if I keep moving around so much, but I'm still not feeling 100%, and I have like a headache that could beat the band right now. It's like boom, 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 and I have a big fucking light right here, which is like kind of killing me. But the writing is good. I'm liking the characters. I'm really interested in the lost girl and the supernatural paranormal situation of it all. I think that could be fun. It is fun so far. So far, I'm liking it. I'm having a good time. I'm also liking April and Eddie. I'm liking that they're working as a team. They're working together. I like that, hey, this supernatural thing happened. Is it weird? Yeah. Did you see it? Yeah, I saw it. Let's believe each other. Let's go for it. I like that. And I like Simone St. James books because they do that. Like the supernatural, it's always like, okay, hey, that's weird, but this is where we are. Let's handle it. Versus chapters and chapters of not wanting to believe it, and it can't be, and no. Like, just fucking go on with the story. So I do like that it's doing that. It's now it's like fast paced, but there are some questions. I'm gonna hope that we find who the lost girl is. I'm also wondering, like, if she was from the town, like, I wonder if somebody involved in the investigation has something to do with it, and that's another reason why she's never been found. Like, we don't like Quentin, okay? We don't like that detective guy. He's a little bit of an asshole. I mean, he is doing his job, but there's something about him that just hits me the wrong way. Same with Detective Beam. He's an asshole too, because he basically tells April, like, I think you're a bad person. Like, I don't think your husband's a bad guy. I think you're a bad girl. Because he... For no fucking reason. Like, that part's annoying, because it's like, I think you're a bad girl. Why? Cause. Like, he has no evidence. He's just guessing shit. And he's like, cause when you found this girl and you took care of her, you didn't cry because you're a girl and you should have cried. It's very that, which is like, the detectives in this are like not helping, you know, my life. They're kind of annoying me. So I'm not a fan of the detectives, I'll tell you that. But I like April. I like Eddie. I like Rose. Rose don't give a fucking shit. I like Rose. She is like old lady love Rose. I'm liking Beatrice and Gracie right now too. They're really cute. It's kind of cool because I feel like multiple characters are coming together to try to find the truth. So I love that. I love a mystery. I love an investigation. I love ghosts and supernatural aspects. So this is actually going better than I thought it would, because I thought it was going to be really bad. But so far, I'm liking it. I don't think it'll be a 5. That would be insane. I'm not getting that kind of vibe, so I don't think we're continuing with that situation. But I am liking it. So I've been talking for 14 minutes again. Jesus Christ, when I talk, I just go to town, don't I? So I will see you guys when I'm fully done, and then we'll know what I think, and we'll talk about the book. Bye. Hi guys, it's Megan Reeds, and I am back with the conclusion of Murder Road. It was good. It was a good one. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Was it perfect? Definitely not. Was it a 5? Oh, hell no. But it was better than I thought it was going to be. It was interesting. I will be honest though, towards the end there were some parts that I was like, what? Who? Where are we going? So I do understand why people said that this book isn't fantastic, or that there are some problems with it. I think that there were moments the writing got a little silly, where April became a character that was very unrelatable, like literally running into danger. For what purpose? I don't understand. So that was a little crazy to me. But let me get to what we know. What do we know? What do we know? Well, we know who the lost girl is. We find out literally like, this happens every time I update this, by the way. I'll update and be like, I wonder if this will happen. And then I'll get back to the book and it's like 2 chapters later. It's like, this happened. It's like, fuck, I wish I had waited. But we found out the lost girl's name was Shannon, and she was in her late 20s. She was somebody who struggled with alcohol and drug abuse. And she was from that small town where the leather jacket was from. She did go to high school there. She dropped out in the 10th grade, but the jacket she stole from a guy she dated, and she just loved the jacket and always wore it. We know that she had a kid, she had a son, and we know that she went missing, and a year later her father reported her missing. So that's why nobody connected the dots of who she was, because when they found her body, there was no record of anything until the next year when the missing persons report was out, because her father, quote unquote, thought she was just a runaway because she had done it 100 times before, and she was an adult. She was in her 20s. So we find out some shit, man. One thing that keeps getting said over and over in the book, and I mentioned it slightly, but not like to a crazy extent, because I really didn't know how big it was going to be in the plot. When they were driving, Eddie just felt drawn to drive that way, and the Detective Quinton, kept saying, why'd you drive this way? Like, you're super lost. Like, what would make you go on this road? What would make you go on this road? And it's kind of ignored of him just saying, I don't know, I went the wrong way, which happens. People go the wrong way. And that's basically what we think it is. But April makes a leap, jump, and a hop. Basically being like, what if he was called here? Like, I was asleep. He was like in and out when he was driving. Why did he feel called here? Also, it's so weird how the woman reacted when they were in the car, like trying to grab Eddie out of the car, having interactions with him. And now this ghost, Shannon, is following them throughout the town. And Eddie lets it be known that he's been hearing her in his head, like things to do, places to go, all this stuff. They end up going to Shannon's house and seeing the father there. And when the father leaves, he goes and breaks into the house and takes the camera. And the whole time April's like, what are you doing? We can't do this. We can't be going in and out of this house. We can get arrested. We already have the cops on us. Like, come on. And she was like, I have to get this camera. I have to get this camera. And apparently it was a camera that Shannon had taken with her when she died, even. And he's being told in his head by Shannon to get it. So they hook up with Beatrice and Gracie, and they use the dark room at the high school to get them developed. And when they get them developed, they see pictures, and there's pictures of her. There's pictures of her with the camera. There's pictures of everything of the last trip that she had, where she was at. And there's also pictures of her and this little boy, who's obviously her son. We come to find out, and it's sprinkled in, so it wasn't something that was super obvious at the beginning. Eddie was adopted when he was 7 years old into the family that he considers his family, and he loves them very much. He doesn't remember anything about his father, or even know like who his father was. He does remember his mom in snippets, but he's tried to block out some of the memories because he just knows she had some problems, and that's why he was adopted. Come to find out, when the pictures get developed, he sees a picture and he realizes, oh my God, Shannon's my mom. So he was her little boy. Some people might have hated that and been like, oh, come on, what a coincidence. I actually liked that. I liked the feeling of him being grown up and being drawn there, that her spirit and who she was, like, you're the only one that I'll let save me. You're the only one that will be able to bridge this gap between us. I actually liked that. Some people probably didn't. I've actually heard that that was like, now that I've finished the book, I did a little researchy, and some people had problems with that. I actually enjoyed that shit, so sorry guys. Also, another thing that I thought was kind of fucking but cool at the same time is one of the things is we find out that there have been 6 hitchhikers that have gone dead that we know of. There's probably way more that we don't, that we know of in the last 20 years, obviously after Shannon. So the situation becomes, number one, who killed Shannon, because we need to figure that out, and number 2, the other situation is, how is she killing all these other people? How is that happening? Come to find out, that I think that's kind of cool in a weird way. When there's a hitchhiker and somebody stops, like, hey, do you need help? And they get in the car, her spirit possesses the person. And they kill the person, and then they don't remember it. So that's another reason why there's so many of these murders that are unsolved. There are people out there that have murdered these people and don't know about it. Don't remember it at all. It's just like they get taken over for a minute. They take whatever they have there, kill them, and then that's it. I liked it, and then I didn't, but I enjoyed it because at least it explained some of it. And like also Shannon as like a ghost was just so enraged by what happened to her, because the whole reason she was doing this trip was she was going to set her life set. She was going to change everything. She wanted one last trip, and she was going to come back, go back to rehab, do all these things, and give herself a second chance. And she felt robbed of that chance. So I guess when she saw people that were very much like herself, she just got mad that why do they get a chance at life when I don't? Like the resentment, the anger, when you die, you become something. And I guess her rage is what was left of her, which is fucking sad. Then, this part I didn't like. We find out who the big bad was, man, and it did fucking nothing for my soul. We find out who killed Shannon, her dad. Huh? Her dad? Why do we didn't see this man until like the 80% of the book, and I was like, what? He did it, and he was like, yeah, she called me one night, she wanted money, I found her and I killed her. And it's like, I didn't think that was a good like twist or an ending. I didn't understand it. We had set up so many other side characters that I feel like we could have found out. It could have been Quinted, could have been Beam. I would have been pissed off if it was Rose, but could have been Rose. Could have been Rose's husband who died. It could have, like, there were so many other areas that we could have went to, and we didn't. Even we could have been like Eddie's father found her and was like, where's my kid? And there were other better ways, I felt like, for this to go. So that was the big bad. Didn't really do anything for me whatsoever. I got really fucking bored with that. Also at the very end, when he ends up, the grandfather, the guy who killed Shannon, tracks down Eddie and April and goes through a window, starts shooting at Rose's house. It's like, I'm gonna kill you, I don't care, I have brain cancer, and I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna kill my grandson, and da-da-da. And it's just kind of like, what? I thought if we were gonna have any like cool ending, it was gonna be involving the ghost and Eddie, or the ghost and April, or like the other spirits helping, like something like that. And I was like, this is the fucking ending? Ick. I didn't like that part at all either. Also, at the very, very, very end, we're supposed to believe that Detective Quinton is a genius, which is very hard for me to believe. Apparently, the reason he kept them in this town, the reason he did everything he did, was because years ago, somebody on their deathbed confessed to killing one of the hitchhikers and said that I didn't remember anything until like right before. They didn't remember what they had done till right before they died. And it's happened 2 to 3 times now where people have come forward claiming that they have killed someone on that road when they're dying, and they're all dying, and also they all have brain trauma, brain cancer. And now that old man who killed Shannon has brain cancer, and now 2 to 3 other people have it. So like, I guess whenever she goes into you, that's like what happens years later to your head. I don't know. But then they'll start recounting every memory that the ghost had, that they have. It was a little weird. It was a little weird, and we're supposed to believe that the detective I was waiting for a sign from Shannon, even though I didn't know who she was, even though I didn't know her name. I was just gonna wait, and I've been waiting for 20 years, and then you came along, and I'm like, I'm not believing this. It's fucking weird. No, that didn't happen. No way that fucking happened. Oh! I almost totally space cadeted on a little side story that we now learned. April, when she ran away, her and her mother, when she was 12, it was obviously because her father was abusive. Come to find out, that was kind of true. Her father was a dick, was abusive, did beat her and the mother, but she ended up, the mom, killing him and like taking a bat and beating him to death and then setting the bed on fire. I'm like, woman, like, you went overtime. And they fled because they had to change their names, change their identities, everything. And her mom is not dead. Her mother is in jail for that murder. She was found after like 10, 15 years. And she's in jail. And I was like, that's a cool little side story. I don't think we needed it. I think just having a fucked up life would have been enough. I don't think we also got like a chapter of her talking to her mom on the phone from jail. And I'm like, I don't think we needed that either. Personally, I was fine without that information. The story as a whole was good. I liked the Lost Girl. I liked the hitchhiking. I liked the 1995. I liked the Eddie being connected to everything. I liked April mostly as a character. She did some shit towards the end and I was like, girl, we need to get your head examined because you're fucking retarded. But aside from that, well, in a horror book, there always has to be one dumb moment, right? So I guess she had that one dumb moment. Questionable. I loved Rose. She was a great character. She was fun. Also, at the end, we find out that her husband is watching over her and is still there and like still loves her. So I liked that too. That was a cute little moment I didn't know I needed. Also, I do like the very end. Because at the very end, one thing that Quentin did do right was he said, you know, when you go back past that highway, it's going to look different on your way back now. I'm sure there's more bodies that we don't know of. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Okay. And they go and they're like, this is a horrible idea. And it says mall coming soon. And April's like, I don't get it. Why would you build a mall here? But Eddie was like, it's actually fucking genius. He said, because they have to dig it all up. So if they, to create the mall, so they'll have to dig up the entire property and then they'll find more bodies. So there will be people put to rest. And I was like, okay, Quentin, you had one smart one. I'll give you that. Granted though, that still took you this long to get, so whatever. Now, was this a fantastic book? No. Was it good? Yes. I am going to rate this book 3. This is a 3-star read for me. It was average. It was good enough. Let's put it that way. Was the writing good? Yeah. I liked most of the characters. Yes. I thought the Lost Girl, I had a little lispy situation there. I thought the Lost Girl situation was interesting. I liked the backstory on the character. I liked like how she killed. I thought that was kind of interesting. I actually liked that. I liked the Eddie connection. I enjoyed that too. What I didn't like, I didn't really need the April backstory. I didn't think it was needed at all. I think the cops were kind of stupid, and the end, I'm supposed to believe this was all contrived, and I don't believe it. I just believe that nobody knew where they were going with it. I thought some of the things April did were really fucking stupid and didn't make any sense. I didn't like that the father was the guy that killed Shannon. He was a character that we did not have until like 80% into the book, 85%. It was like red herring. Like, what? Where are you? You're over here? Okay, hi, random man. Really weird. Didn't like that. I also didn't like his why. It didn't make sense. And they even say as characters, April and Eddie, like, that doesn't make sense why you killed your kid that way. So I'm just like really confused. Did like the ending though. Like the actual ending of them digging everything up. I like that. So this is a 3-star for me. I love this author. I actually think that her books are really fantastic. Usually I've rated a good amount of her books either a 4 or a 5. This is the first time I've ever rated her a 3. I can tell you that. But it was fine. It was better than I thought. The way that everybody was talking, I thought I was going to give this like a 1 or 2 or something, but it was okay. Would I recommend reading it? If you're new to the genre, yeah. If like this is like one of your first thriller, like horror kind of books, then yes, I would recommend it. If you are a big fan and have been reading novels of this particular brand for years, then no, because aspects of it have been done before and done better. But overall, it was a fun read. It was a fun read. I really liked a good chunk of the characters. I actually think Simone St. James writes characters really well. Like I'm always interested in finding out what's going to go on with them. So, and I like the paranormal aspects. So this is a 3 for me. I really, really loved it, and we did it, guys. This is the end of this week's video. You have seen me do 4 books. You have seen me give most of them 5s. You have seen me give this a 3. And you have seen me, most importantly, sick as a dog and somehow slowly creep out of it. So hopefully the next time you see me, I will be 100% better, or at least 90. I feel like I'm getting to the 70s and 80s marks. So we're getting there. We're chugging along. But it was great seeing you guys. I hope you guys loved this video. And I will see you guys next week.